It's the Literary License Podcast, Kings of Horror episodes, reading and digesting books from the masters of modern horror, and viewing the films. Your co-hosts tonight are Vicky Ray, Leandro Ghazi, Craig Johnson, David Grunt, and Keith Shago, giving you a word by word, scene by scene, and everything in between, 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 and everything in between.
Hello, welcome to the Literary License Podcast and their Books to Screens Kings of Horror episode. We'll be discussing Let the Right One In by John Ajvide Lindqvist. I'm sure I mispronounced that. And the Swedish film from 2008. And before we get started, let's find out who's with us. We got Matthew Bruckmeyer with us. Hello, Matthew.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Hey. And we got Derek Miller with us. Hello, Chad.
Hey, guys. Nice to see you again.
And we got Craig Johnson. Hello, Craig.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
And David Grunt. Hello, David.
Hello there.
And Leandro Ghazi. Hello, Leandro.
Hello, Keith. Hello, everyone. How are you?
And I'm your host, Keith Shago. And before we get started, let's find out what we've been up to. And we'll start off with you, Chad. What have you been up to since last time we spoke to you, which I think was a week ago, or maybe?
Yeah, a week ago, 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, definitely 2 weeks ago. Writer's block, nothing but. This whole war, we're going to call it what it is. War in Ukraine has just, it's just blocked me out. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. My son is currently serving and I can't stop watching the news. It's on 24/7 in my house. And I feel absolutely horrible for what's going on. You know, if my country, being the United States, doesn't want to be the humanitarians that we're all portrayed in the movies and go help out, then, you know, maybe I should go pick up arms and go help out myself. Do my part for Ukraine. My personal thoughts.
But there's a news story on BBC yesterday that was kind of embarrassing. That there was a story, I think, that basically there's these Ukrainian soldiers on an island and the Russian ship came through and they said, go fuck yourself, and they killed them.
Wow. But I heard this live.
People are alive now and they were on BBC News and they looked really embarrassing because it never happened. And the guy said,
wow. Yeah, you gotta wonder how much of it's propaganda, but you know, it is what it is.
You know, I don't have any views on it at all, but when I saw that, and it's just that the BBC reporter was like trying to keep it together, and they're like, "Oh well, we're really sorry that we reported that." And he goes, "Why did you report it? Where did you get your stories from?" People were like, "Where are you getting your stories from? You can't sit there and say that we're dead. We're living with our families. We're not in prison camp. We're not dead. That didn't happen." And it's like it went. I mean, next thing you know, it just got cut. They just cut it out of this thing. Like, poof. So yeah, it was kind of like, oh, but it was funny watching that. So I started laughing. Nothing's better than a reporter trying to get out of a mess that they put themselves in.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take the show all political there for a second. I just a rant kind of like jumped onto the tip of my tongue and took over.
Well, it's all over everything now. So I mean, yeah, it's understandable. It's part of everyone's life at the moment. So. But what else have you been up to besides watching the news?
Well, I'm working on the sequel to the splatter western Starving Zoe. This one's called Tracking Zoe. It actually has ties to the Texas fight for independence, which I'm sure is all mistold in history books as well. That's it. Actually, working with my wife for once as a co-author. We're gonna see what she brings to the table. She's way nastier of a writer than I am. So people give me hell for starving Zoe. I just want them all to know that she was the editor. She would bring it back to me every night and go, "Hey, you need to make this nastier. You need to describe this more. We need to know what it feels like, what it sounds like, what it smells like." Okay.
It's a bit like Dick Francis and his wife who used to co-write together when they were doing their novels and stuff.
But it's actually nice. It's nice. It's nice to. What was that?
I said Dick Francis. Well, didn't he go to prison? Was it him? Oh no, that's Jeffrey Archer. Never mind.
Jeffrey Archer. Dick Francis. I think he was writing a lot about horses and stuff, horse racing and stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of dressage.
And what about yourself, Matthew? What have you been up to?
All the usual: reading, writing, checking out films. Let's see, some things that I watched. That Inventing Anna was pretty good. Did you see that?
No, haven't seen that.
It's about you may have heard of her. She said that she was a German heiress and went to New York City, and she was almost got a bank loan for like $200 million or something insane like that to start this art. But she was just like a Russian fake. She faked it all. She took like so many of these millionaires' money, which is it's kind of I mean, she's a thief, so you don't. But some of these people like deserve to get ripped off the way it was funny.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of that story about they made a play and they made a movie called 6 Degrees Separation.
Oh yeah,
basically where this kid came in and said he was Sidney Poitier's son, and he like only the rich and elite people were like taking him in and giving him money and stuff like this. And he was just like a hooker, basically. He was just a man of prostitute. Really. He
gave him the old speech about Catcher in the Rye.
Cats.
Catcher in the Rye. He's like
well, seeing what happened in the
great play.
That's probably a good escape if we were telling the truth.
I think I'll be doing movie reviews now for a movie web. I don't know, some website that they just hired me to do reviews. That's something.
Yeah. Reading reviews is. I mean, I do a lot of book reviews and stuff like this. So I get a lot of stuff sent to me now. I quite like it. It's like, you get sent to them, put your little thing out there.
Yeah, I used to do book reviews for Cultured Vultures a while back. I still get books in the mail, and it's been like years since I wrote any reviews for them.
I know they just send them to my Kindle now, so it's just like this gets full sort of thing. So
nice.
And what about yourself, Leandro? What have you been up to? It's been a month.
Yeah, I've been working a lot, reading, watching movies. Not much more than that.
Face mask off, no more lockdown, so getting back to that.
Yeah. Last week was holiday at work, but I have to work 3 days, so the other two I was chilling and but not doing like.
And what about yourself, Craig? What have you been up to?
I've been watching. I managed to watch Last Night in Soho.
Oh yeah.
Which was a brilliant movie, just so beautifully made. Just really lovely to see, like 1960s and how the style of that time. They just captured it perfectly. And I've been watching Doctor Who on the Forces TV on digital TV. I think I watched The City of Death, written by Douglas Adams. So it was brilliant with Tom Baker. Such a classic. And I've updated one of my galleries. I've updated the Degree Art gallery. The links are in. If you go to the Craig's World link in the newsletter, I've updated some artworks on there, and just that and battling tube strikes this week in London, which was a bit of a nightmare. But it's nothing if you compare what's happening in Ukraine. I haven't got much to complain about.
No, we're living in paradise.
And what about yourself, David? What have you been up to?
Hi there. Yeah, just just continuing sort of playing. And last night I went down, did a little session down in Camden with some friends, and that was great. Just going over some covers, and I'm sort of finally getting some of the songs put together now, just on GarageBand. And very proud of Craig going boxing. He's a boxer now, I have to watch myself. You might just give us a swift left there. But no, great. And also just saying what
as well.
Oh yeah, did some more doing the sort of open nights, just playing songs like with some friends. And I saw the Nightmare Alley that Matthew was going on about. I thought it was amazing. And you've got to go and see it at the cinema. Even though it is in color, the colors are even sort of like sinister. Just a great movie. And Licorice Pizza and Moonfall. That was really cool. I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
And my front, well, we've been nominated for 4 Rondo Awards, a documentary that we helped out on called Dark Shadows and Beyond, the story of Jonathan Frid. And then Best Podcast, we've been nominated. And we've been nominated for Best Interview with our Don Briscoe tribute. We got, that's quite special one, actually, because Don Briscoe's family, since he died, and even he suffered basically manic depression and stuff like that. So after Dark Shadows, he went back home and kind of went into a life of solitude, and had his family had to take care of him. So they had refused to speak to the press, so they actually spoke to us. So we've been nominated for that interview, and then I got nominated for Best Horror Host. So we'll see how that goes. And then I've been invited to be part of the Fellowship of the Royal Society of Arts here in the UK under the Queen Elizabeth. So we'll see how that goes. So,
and what do you have to do?
You become a member. Frankly speaking, I'm not sure why they nominated me, considering unless the Queen's sitting at home and watching horror films, I'm not quite sure. It is an honor. I get a title. I guess that's something as well. An American getting a title when most Americans have to pay for them. But it is what it is. I mean, it's an honor. It's quite nice that they thought of that. But outside of that, so we're.
Do we have to call you sir? Or not yet?
Yeah. Probably dickhead. Probably something probably more fitting, really. But yeah, and outside of that, we urge all our people to vote and stuff like that. And then, and all you have to do is, go onto our Facebook page or to our website and just click on the banner above, and it'll teach you how to put you in the right direction if you want to vote. And outside of that, I have to sit there and say I watched this Netflix series that loved. I mean, there's only like 5 episodes called Worst Roommate Ever. That was fantastic. I mean, it's a true story kind of thing about. The best one was the old woman who basically was only 40, and she dressed herself as an old woman so that people would trust her, and then she just murdered people for their toll tax.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I watched that too. It's a good show.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with most of the cases. Each episode is a different case.
Okay. Because I think I watched one that was a man that said he was a lawyer, and then he was kind of renting a room, and then he didn't want to go from the house, and then he was saying that it was now his house. That
was one of them. Yeah,
serial slaughter. Apparently, that is a thing. I don't know if it's a thing anymore. I know in this country, swatting used to be a thing, but I think it's outlawed here now.
Yeah, it's outlawed now. Yeah,
But I remember a friend of mine owned the house. They went away for 3 months on holiday because he had to work in a foreign country. So the family moved over there for 3 months. And when they got back, they had squatters in, and it took them 2.5 years to get these squatters out. So they couldn't even live in their own house. So, I mean, I see both sides. I mean, if something's vacant and it's standing empty, and if maybe it's slightly derelict or something, maybe, but if no one's owning it, maybe, I can understand it. But if but they were actually going to rich people's houses and just squatting their way. You can go away on holiday, for a weekend, and if squatters got in, you can't, all they have to do is go and change the locks, and you're screwed. You can't get rid of them.
That is a great idea. I'm going to stop paying my mortgage today. and start that.
It's like the movie My Beautiful Laundrette, where they get the bailiffs in just to get the squatters out, and then he says, "I'm going to change the locks tomorrow."
It's amazing. It's amazing there's a law that actually promotes it and protects them. That's what the funny thing about it is. Like, it's like, who came up with that law, sort of thing. But yeah, outside of that, I've just been watching odds and ends and stuff like that. So that's pretty much it for me. Well, that will lead us to Let the Right One In, which is a Swedish 2004 vampire novel by Swedish writer John Ajvide Lindqvist. The story is a relationship between a 12-year-old boy, Oskar, and centuries-old vampire child, Eli. It takes place in Blackeberg, a working-class suburb of Stockholm, in the early 1980s. The book focuses on the dark side of humanity, dealing with thematically heavy issues such as existential anxiety, social isolation, fatherlessness, divorce, alcoholism, social bullying, paedophilia, genital mutilation, self-mutilation, and murder. The book was a bestseller in the author's home country of Sweden, and it was translated into 7 languages across the world, including English. A Spanish language film, Let the Right One In, directed by Tomas Alfredson, which we'll be discussing later, was released in 2008, and the English language film adaptation based on the Lindqvist screenplay titled Let Me In, directed by Matt Reeves, was released in 2010. An English language stage adaptation premiered in 2013 here in the UK. American network TNT ordered a pilot episode for a television series based on the novel to premiere in 2017. However, TNT ultimately passed on the series. In 2021, Showtime ordered a pilot, later given a series order, and will be produced by Tomorrow Studios and will be out in 2022. So what we're going to do is cut to the synopsis of the book, Let the Right One In, and we'll be right back.
The synopsis for Let the Right One In by Swedish writer John Ajvide Lindqvist. In 1981, Blackberg, Stockholm, Oskar is a 12-year-old boy who lives with his mother, who is loving and with whom he initially seems to have a close connection. His father, whom Oskar visits occasionally, is an alcoholic living in the countryside. Because the boy is the victim of a merciless bullying, Oskar has gained morbid interests which include crime and forensics, and he keeps a scrapbook filled with newspaper articles about murders. One day he befriends Eli, a girl about the same age, who just moved in next door. She lives with an older man named Heiken, a former teacher who was fired when caught in possession of child pornography. She's revealed to be a vampire who is turned as a child and is therefore stuck forever in a young body and mind. Oskar and Eli develop a close relationship, and she helps him fight back against his tormentors. Throughout the book, the relationship gradually becomes closer, and they reveal more of themselves, including fragments of Eli's human life. Among the details revealed is that Eli is a boy named Elias, who was castrated when she was turned into a vampire over 200 years ago. However, she dresses in female clothing and perceived by outsiders as a young girl. Heiken serves Eli, whom he loves, by procuring blood from the living, fighting against his conscience and choosing victims whom he can physically trap, but who are not too young. Eli gives him money for doing this. Heiken offers to go out one last time under the condition that he spends the night with Eli after she gets the blood, but with the caveat that he may only touch Eli. Heiken's last attempt to get blood fails and he's caught. Just before capture, however, he initially disfigures himself with acid so that the police will not be able to trace Eli through him. When Eli finds him in the hospital, Heiken offers his blood and is drunk dry while sitting on the window ledge, but a guard interrupts them and Eli fails to kill him. So that he won't also end up becoming a vampire, Heiken throws himself out the window to the ground below. Despite this, he reanimates as a mindless vampire driven only by his desire for Eli. Huygens then relentlessly pursues Eli, managing to trap her in a basement before trying to rape her, but she fights him off and escapes. Later, the wounded Huygens is destroyed by Tommy, who actually gets locked in the basement with him. Meanwhile, Blackeberg, local alcoholic Lack, suspects a child is responsible for the murder of his best friend, Jacques, whom Eli has killed for blood. Later, Locke witnesses Eli attack on his sometime girlfriend, Virginia. She attempts to drink her blood, but is fought off by Locke. Virginia survives, but starts turning into a vampire. She does not realize her infection until she tries to prolong her life by drinking her own blood, and finds that exposure to the sun causes boils on her skin. Upon being hospitalized, Virginia realizes that she has turned into and kills herself in her bed by deliberately exposing herself by daylight. Lack, while attempting to avenge Virginia, is thwarted by Oskar and Eli. Oskar eventually fights back and injures his tormentor, Johnny, for which the boy's older brother Jimmy hunts down and attempts to hurt Oskar in retaliation. Oskar eventually fights back and injures his tormentor, Johnny, for which the boy's older brother Jimmy hunts down and attempts to hurt Oskar in retaliation. Oskar further incurs their wrath when he sets fire to their desk, destroying a treasured photo album belonging to their father. They corner Oskar at night at the local swimming pool and attempt to drown him. However, Eli rescues Oskar and decapitates the two brothers. Together they flee the city with Eli's money and possessions. And that is the synopsis of Let the Right One In by Swedish writer John Ajvide Lindqvist.
Hello, welcome back to the Literary License Podcast, and we're discussing Let the Right One In, the novels. And starting with you, Matthew, what are your thoughts of Let the Right One In, the book?
Oh, it's a long-time fan, one of my favorite books of all time. I think it's like one of the greatest vampire books ever written. It's so deep, the things it looks at, bullying, gender issues. The gender issues, I think, are very ahead of its time. I mean, she changes pronouns halfway through the book. I don't remember I know it was an issue, but not like it is today with pronouns. They're such a huge thing today, and they really took it on and tackled it back then. It was almost 20 years ago the book came out, and loneliness and just so much going on in there. It's a heart, pulls at your heartstrings. The book is so complicated and long. So many, I counted over 20 points of view, and you don't really notice it, because they are all in service to the story. So you can see the storyline moving along. But if you really take a look at that book, there's this like when she's up on the roof of the hospital, and it's like a cab pulls up, and suddenly you're in the perspective of the cab driver for a minute. There's so many points of view in that book, and but it's a fabulous, great book. One of my favorites.
And what about yourself, Craig? What are your thoughts?
It was a really nice book. It was very graphic. Probably more. I found the book more graphic than the movie. But I like what Matthew said about the socio themes and stuff.
Yeah, it's ahead of its time.
It was really nice. It was nice to learn about Oskar and his what he was going through when he was at the school and things, because we've all been there. When everyone's experienced bullying at some stage in their life, sort of thing, and we can all relate to it. I thought it was the sense of like the cold sense. I could feel that come through in the novel as well. But yeah, it was a good, enjoyable book, and it was really. I think the book, I could tell I was more in the 1980s when I was reading the book, more so than the film as well, because the film, I felt it was more like 90s, but I think it's just because it was a Swedish film, so it was a bit different from say like a typical 80s movie sort of thing. And I think it's a really important book as well, because it shows that the girl, even though the girl was she was vulnerable, you could sense like a sense of vulnerability about her sort of thing that came through, and I really felt for the characters, and it was really good character building as well.
Yeah, really good.
David, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny. I think I agree with a lot of points Craig just come up with there. Like, I've lived in Sweden, and Denmark. It is a cool place. It's not like Newcastle where it seems to get inside your bones. It's just like it's like more like a sort of like it's inside your head. It's really bizarre feeling. But it's also that big sky thing that you get in America. When you can see all the stars at once, almost like But I think the little girl, she was very the bullying thing, and the little boy, it just. Really sad, because I think we've all gone through that, like in certain ways, like, some people psychological bullying or whatever, like, or physical bullying,
It kind of freaked me out in the book as well about there was like that sense of paedophilia, sort of that thin line. It was more, went into more detail about what he was going to do to the boys and in the, and to target the kids in the locker room scenes. It was more in detail in the book than what was shown in the film. I was kind of thankful for that. Actually, in the movie, it was sort of less shown.
But you can pan it more out in a book.
It was quite unnerving. Sorry.
I think that's fine. That's great. That's what Craig was saying. I totally agree. He's. I think, but as I say, like in a book, you pan it out. You can really fill the character out. I mean, a short story is like you can only just do like a paper thin version of the person or the protagonist or whatever. But when in a novel, like you can really expand on that. You can really get right into the nuts and bolts of it, Fantastic. Whereas in a movie, like you've got a certain amount of time to sort of say what you have to say or show what you have to show.
Even that bit where the guy in the first scenes where he's hanging him up, he gasses him and he hangs him upside down, cuts his throat and then tries to fill up a funnel. That was really like detailed in the book. Whereas in the movie, it was more,
just
it left you guessing, thinking like, why the hell has he hung someone upside down? But that was in the book. It explains it because you want to drain someone out completely, sort of thing.
It's like bled out.
Yeah.
Wow.
What about yourself, Leandro? What are your thoughts?
Well, it was really interesting. Like it's the first book that I read that were vampires and bullying appear in the same story. I have read other books two from Stephen King where bullying appear, but one is It, the other one is The Body. I haven't read so many books where bullying appear like so like present and in detail like in this one. Interesting, bit long to read, but I enjoyed.
What about Chad? What are your thoughts?
This book actually, I was one of those people, typical American, sorry, apologizing in advance. I was one of those people that I saw the American film first and then saw the Swedish film and then read the book. And the book is by far, just in case anyone is wondering, the best story out of all three of those options. It made me realize that I was sympathizing with Oskar, the main character, a lot, and I had forgotten, and I'm not quite sure if this is just memories that have been repressed or not. Keith, you're an expert in all of this. Perhaps you could analyze my brain someday, but I was bullied quite a lot in like junior high, and it's always seemed to be in those vulnerable classes, those PE classes where you're wearing, we're talking the 80s here, baby. I was wearing the shorty shorts and the tall socks. It's the guys in the locker room always giving you hell when you're at your most vulnerable. And I'd forgotten about a lot of that. when I was reading this book, though, it all kind of came back, and I'm like, oh my God, man, I was the victim of some really similar shit. And I had to like stop reading and just think about it for a long time. And the author did a great job of just, I mean, it makes me wonder what they experienced when they were in school. You know, just, did you go through this as well? Is this, you know, your kind of coming out story, your story of explaining what all happened to you through these characters? And I think maybe it might have been. I'd be interested to hear from his lips what he went through.
There's not much on him out there. I've tried, you know, I know his father drowned, and there's a lot of water references in all of his works. Like in Let the Right One In, there's tons of. When they drag him out in the book, they drag him out. They're going to drown him in the ice. They do it differently in the movie. I didn't really like, but there's all this water stuff constantly. I don't know if you noticed that, but it's because his father drowned. But there's not much on him. Is he? I tried to look up. Is he gay? Is he out of the closet? Like, I couldn't find anything.
He's got that Swedish bio that basically is like, you know, whether you're ABBA or the maker of Volvo or even, you know, Britt Eklund, they always tend to keep their private life very, very private. You know anything about them, sort of thing. But I mean, from when I was able, I mean, he used to be a stand-up comic,
right?
I know that he decided to write a book, which this was his first one. Well, he wrote a couple of short stories before this one, and in interviews that you see with him, he's a man of very few words. He's a bit like to me, he's like the Swedish horror writer version of John Irving. That's what he kind of reminds me of, where John Irving doesn't give too much away, but there's enough of him and there's enough of John Irving in his works that you can pretty much start mapping out what his background story is.
Right.
And, you know, from all the books that I've read about Freilinghurst, and I've read every single one of them, there's always isolation. The characters are always very much on their own. And at first, when I first read the Let the Right One In, I thought maybe this was a Swedish thing, because a lot of Swedish movies and books and are normally about, you know, being on your own. I mean, you know, the girl with the dragon tattoo, you know, that's all about isolation. And, you know, and if you look at, you know, the works of Ingmar Bergman, about isolation again. So at first I thought that maybe, you know, this is just a regular thing. And, you know, but when it comes to him, there seems to be a little bit more personality in the isolation. So with here, we got Oscar's isolation, and we also have the beginning of the Latchkey Kid coming on here as well. So obviously that was going on in Sweden as was going around the rest of the world in the 80s. So Oscar's a Latchkey Kid. So we got the isolation of Oskar here. In Little Star, we have the isolation of the main character there at the harbor. And even I Am the Tiger, there's the isolation of people within families, and they're still isolated within their own family. So I would say that's probably part of him. And I also found that there's no lasting relationships in any of his books either. There's no happy marriages. There's no
there's let the dreams
dating, and if they do date, they kind of date out of necessity, not out of emotion.
Well, let the old dreams die, which is a love story and a sequel to Let the Right One In. And it is all super hopeful, which I didn't like it because of this. Mm-hmm. It's super hopeful. You read it, right, Keith? It's about a married couple who are just totally devoted to each other and totally love each other. And they have the most perfect marriage, and they're just so happy. And they met because the wife was the police officer involved in the case, and he was the conductor on the train at the very end. And when they get terminal cancer, they decided to try to go find them so that they can become vampires together, because apparently Ellie and Oskar are still happily being vampires in Spain to this day. But, I didn't like it. I was like, for one, you didn't get to see Oskar and Ellie. You just hear about these rumors. Number two, it's too damn fucking happy. Right? I don't know.
Well, I just read I Am the Tiger, and it does reference the going-ons in Blackeberg in the 1980s, and they're referring to the Oskar story. And basically, when they left, well, and when they've been looking for Oskar, they're having a bad. The detective, the guy who is writing about what happened there, he's like a famous reporter, become a famous crime reporter dealing with underground crimes. And he said that when they were looking for the case of what supposedly happened, that basically what they came up with was nothing but destitute and isolation within an unhappy compound. So he decided not to write about it. And he's talking about the Oskar story when they were able to figure out where he may have went. And that's the reason why they want to go on, because the newspaper didn't want to print anything about where they may be because it was too depressing. So that totally goes against that short story that he put in there. But as you were saying, I mean, that book did, An Old Dream does kind of goes against the grain of what he's writing. It's almost like he's like, I've been told to write something slightly different with something a bit more hopeful, and came out with though natural to him. So I do understand what you're saying in that book you just mentioned.
It was in first person too. It was like reminded me of Edgar Allan Poe, like looking back.
I also found, because there's a bunch of short stories, I also think that it was a way for him to like experiment in different things in different ways and see what he could do. I mean, I know he does, after that, he does revert back to his regular style of writing and stuff like this. And
the story about the lady who searches bags, she's a border patrol. They made that into a movie, I think, right? Or is it a series? I heard it's really good.
So, I mean, even the harbor. I mean, that also includes a lot of water, and that's probably more directed, about his father's death and stuff like this, and the drowning and sort of thing. So yeah. So when it comes to the author, from what you're saying, I would sit there and say that if you want to know about him, I think you have to read his body of work, and I think that's how you're going to be able to scope out much about him. But as I said before, I don't think he has children or married, or if he is in a relationship, I don't think anyone knows anything about it. If he is a homosexual, I mean, in Sweden, I mean, that's not a big deal, especially in Europe. I mean, so I'm not sure if he is, he would need to hide that or anything like that. But I said before, or maybe he just doesn't believe in relationships. Maybe he's just
right.
Just pays for them for the
what his memory.
Or maybe he's just a typical writer, and he gets in a new one every 5 years.
Yeah.
Or is that just an American thing? I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, I said before, I mean, I've looked up into, I mean, he's one of these people I'm so enthralled with. I mean, I'm a huge fan of his. Once I read Let the Right One In, it's like, every time a book comes out, I mean, he's, basically I get a thing from Amazon, this book's coming out. And lately, for the last 3 books, they actually get sent to me. His publisher actually sends them to me to review, so I'm actually even luckier. But there for a while, it's like, yeah, I'm just hooked on his writing style and the way he writes, and his characters are so interesting, and everything's just so intricate. And even the smallest, minute characters that really don't mean anything, like the drunk in Let the Right One In. His character's he's not really mandatory to plot, but he's so well drawn out within the 5 paragraphs that's written about him that everything about him.
Yeah, I was saying that he's so many different points of view, and he'll, like I said, that cab driver, he does a summary of him. He starts talking about the cab driver, and you start to get to know this guy for a second, just so that he can see Ely fall off the building, and then that guy, you never come back to him, never see him again, but he totally fleshes him out. You feel like you know him. He's an amazing writer.
And even with the deal with he also captures the political climate that's going on there, and on a social economic platform as well. Knowing that basically in Sweden in the 80s, they're going through, like the rest of the world, Europe was going through like a really bad recession at that time. The 70s, we may have had a great music and stuff like this, but even in America, I mean, but it wasn't an easy time to live economically. Right. And then you had Sweden, basically building these homes, these little box houses, basically like boxes on top of boxes sort of thing, for lower incomes and struggling families. And I love the way that he captured that. and and he mentioned this in the new one as well, I'm the Tiger. I'm not going to give too much of that away because that's coming out and I think everyone should read it. But he does mention that how the city officials are so out of it when it comes to like planning that basically they build these, house plants, and then they put like little things in the middle for people to congregate, knowing that these people, no one ever congregates in these areas like the playground area. No one congregates there because these people are just too depressed to even want to see each other. And I love how he expresses that within his books and stuff like this. And he doesn't do it like in a way that he's hammering you over the head about anything. He's not doing a political or social or lesson or forthright tale about that. That's just part of the tale, and this is part of the characters. And when it's part of the characters, this also becomes, this is the reason why they are who they are, sort of thing. And I like that. He's not looking to answer. He's not saying that the world needs to change to be a better place. This is that these are these characters, and this is what it is.
It's the world. He grew up in Blackeberg. It's a real place. It's not a fictional place. Yeah.
Well, a lot of his stories take place around there, actually. I think the only one that doesn't take place there is the harbor.
Mm-hmm.
So, I Am the Tiger takes place there. Handling the Undead takes place there.
Is that the Swedish dairy?
Yes. It's not fictional. It's a real place.
Now, another thing I like about Lindqvist's work is that he can things like the werewolf in Little Star, zombies and Unhandling the Dead and the vampire here. And I love the way that he gives something that can be old and tired and give it a whole new look and spin on it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the look of the vampire, in this instance sort of thing. He didn't do the Anne Rice one or the Bram Stoker one or any kind of, way of doing, any kind of variation of that. He came up with his own. And he does that with everything he does. And I have to give him credit for that because I think that's really hard because I find that there are a lot of authors out there who kind of like take it and it's like take stuff that's already lore and just make the lore their own, where he just makes an all new kind of folklore with his.
Well, like Nosferatu, and Murrow, I mean, they wouldn't. The estate of Bram Stoker wouldn't allow him to do the original story, so he just had to adapt his own thing, But you talk about Sweden, yeah. It's funny. I lived in Sweden because we worked there, and they do have these little. They're almost like Lego boxes, and it's like there's a sort of hole in the middle, like you said, and it's supposed to congregate. There's benches there, and they have the flag up, but nobody goes down, it's nobody wants to, Even in the summer when it's nice, like nobody wants to congregate, So they're just the same as all other human beings on the planet. They just want to keep their own little thing going, Nobody really wants to sort of like mix.
Well, I imagine that in those countries, that there is colder, like more than other places. Like people tend to stay inside and be more reserved, right? I don't know if once I heard that apparently, I don't know if it is Sweden. I think it's one has the highest ranking of people committing suicide on Sundays.
Wow.
Because of depression, even though it's one of the wealthiest countries in the world. So you were thinking, okay, people are having everything, but probably don't have the weather or the time to use it. And then
have SAD syndrome. Yeah, SAD syndrome, lack of light.
SAD syndrome doesn't really take place too much in the southern part of Sweden. It's more in the northern part where they get 24 hours.
Get further up, like maybe Lapland, Iceland. Yeah, of course, yeah. Or top part of it, but Northern Lights is beautiful. We did see it; it was great. But I don't think I would like to live somewhere like that. Honestly, it's like living inside a ping pong ball. Everything's white, the sky's white, the ground's white, you're white. It's really weird, Even
there's no more but sun,
I'm so envious of you guys. I really am. Living in America, all we get is a furniture store. That's all we get in Sweden. I'm so envious of you that you have been there and you've experienced.
Move to IKEA. That's the one.
And then we can die trying to get out.
Yeah, try to build a chair.
Wow. It's also quite interesting from a Swedish point of writing about Sweden is that, especially like in the UK and, outside of Sweden, I mean, Sweden's always known as having this prototype about the way to live. They have the best socialist government. They have the best socialist way of life. And so before Lindqvist, I just assumed that everyone just kind of lived the same, sort of thing. Because that's the image that you get. I know that they pay high taxes. They say anywhere between 75 to 80% of their wages goes to taxes.
What?
You never got into black metal, man?
Yeah.
You never listen to that stuff? Or those guys, they burn down churches and shit, man?
I watched Metalocalypse. I mean, is that close enough?
Well, that was based on the one guy was supposed to be a Swedish black metal guy. Yeah, you watch Till the Light Takes Us. It's a fascinating documentary about the late 80s, early 90s in Sweden with these. You know what I'm talking about, right? They were burning down churches that were like 400 years old, and they end up killing each other. And of course, there's no jail sentence. The jail sentences that they are short. So, like the one guy, he's out of prison. He's on Twitter acting like a neo-Nazi asshole and stuff.
Yeah,
there's a dark side out there. They're old Vikings and shit, man.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely a dark side. I mean, Annie Frid or Frida from ABBA. I mean, there's a documentary that basically what happened is when Hitler during World War II went to Norway, Sweden, and decided to impregnate all the women to come up with the master race. And Sweden and Norway were on board with this, even though they were neutral. But they were on board with this. And then when the war ended, they took all those children and they put them in asylums where they stayed for the rest of their lives until they died. And Frida was one of those ones, but her grandparents had to smuggle her over into Sweden and hide her in Sweden. And then, of course, she became who she is today, sort of thing. But you're like watching this going, oh, okay.
Yeah. Midsummer.
I mean, to be honest, I think the reason why we have Lindqvist anyway today is he came off the back of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which became a phenomenon in book sales. They took the Swedish book and they basically released it after the author died. After he wrote all three of them, he died. They released them onto the world, and then Lindqvist kind of came in behind that sort of thing, and that's why we have Lindqvist. And I have to sit there and say that he writes everything in Swedish, as we know. His English I don't think he knows a lot of English, because when I have seen him in interviews and stuff like that, even in English interviews, they normally have an interpreter with him.
Okay.
So who's ever adapting his books into English does a fantastic job. I have to give them that, because a friend of mine, Christina, she's from Sweden, and she says that Swedish writing is very, very staccato. It's da 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 da, because it's the Germanic, the Germanic form of in their language and stuff like this. And there's not a lot of expressions and a lot of description. They kind of say things and you read in between that. So whoever does his books and puts them in English does a fantastic job, because they have to put all the descriptions into it. And what he was sitting there saying, that when they're adapting it into English, that the person who's adapting it also knows Swedish, but he has to know exactly how they're adapting it every step of the way. So they have a really good partnership, so that his adaptations are always done by the same person.
Great. I didn't know that. That's really interesting. It's like Lars von Trier, his English is very good. And I think he lived in England for a bit, but he's a big exponent of trying to bipolarism, depression, but not always because Dogville was interesting. But I remember watching, I think it was, I'm trying to remember, in the Danish it was called Festen. It's a family party, and how all the dark secrets come out when everyone gets drunk, But I don't know why it just seems to be prevalent, and in Newcastle, funny enough, where I'm from, there's always there's a real darkness there, and bullying, and all the other sort of stuff that we're talking about now. Strange how it's seems like you would think as you go further to the top of the world, you'll get lighter, you would feel more happier. You're getting more, maybe you're getting less oxygen and more sort of I don't know, something else. But but no, it's really, kind of sad, but I really, really related to this.
I think a lot of bullying, there's bullying and there's bullying. And I think when we get to the really rough bullying, it tends to be in more economically starved areas anyway, that
True.
Sort of thing. And I think that, I would sit there and say that when you have extreme bullying, it tends to be with people that it normally happens economically because no one's really happy with themselves, sort of thing. And then when you got a lot of people going through a lot of hardship, and when you do bully someone, you know, normally if you're bullying someone, it's a way to deflect what's really going on with yourself. So basically, if you point out someone else's faults, that way no one's looking at your own faults.
Exactly.
And that's pretty much what it is. I mean, even the bullying in here, I mean, I know the bullying, I mean, this has to be one of the worst cases of bullying ever, what's happening to Oskar in here, you know, to the point where, you know, he's wearing a piss ring to basically because he's pissing his pants and to soak up the urine and stuff like this. And so, and it just goes, you know, quite on. But then when you get into the boys that are bullying, then you find out their lives are not a piece of cake either here, sort of thing. There's a lot of problems going on behind the scenes with these two as well, sort of thing.
You know, it's crazy. It's crazy that you say that, because now that I think about it, you know, I think back to the kids that bullied me when I was in like elementary, junior high, that sort of thing. Every single one of those guys that gave me a hard time when I was growing up, when I was involved in a career in law enforcement later on in life, every single one of those guys ended up on the opposite end of the bars. Like those guys, I would always see them just getting arrested. You know, it's like maybe, you know, the place where I'm from in Texas, a little town called Greenville. If you Google it, it's most known for having a sign that hangs across its main street that reads, "Welcome to Greenville, the blackest land, the whitest people." I wish I was making that up. I'm totally not. But it's very, very classist, or at least it was when I was a child. And, you know, the poor kids got picked on, the upper class kids, you know, nothing ever happened to them. They were totally fine. They were the ones that, you know, did the bullying, really. But yes, now that you say that, every single one of those guys, when I worked for the sheriff's department in the county where I'm from, every single one of those guys used to get arrested like clockwork. And then they would apologize profusely for all the horrible things they did to me growing up. Like I still dwelled on that or something, which I guess is what I'm doing right this second. I don't know. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I think if you think I think in the 90s, 80s, 90s, it was like, well, sadly, right? More like normal. And probably if someone was bullying you, you didn't see it as a bully up to a certain extent. For example, I remember that I grew up, and my friend from the neighborhood, each of us has a nickname, right? I was Little Whale because I was really fat. Someone was the Big Head, right? And like that. And I remember that it was really interesting because everyone has a nickname. No one was getting offended, right? And we were having like a fun, and it was, and I remember the ones they come to pick me up, you know, to go to play football, and then they were so used to call me Little Whale that they didn't even remember my name. So my stepmother opened the door because they rang the bell, and they said, "Is Little Whale here?" And she said, "What?" And I was hearing from the window as I'm going down, and then they were laughing. I said, "I don't know, I can't remember his name." But then I remember that, yes, at school I used to have an English class, right? And there was they were mixing students from different ages, and I have 1 year younger classmate. You know, they were getting all us together. I don't know, and they were making the mix about my last name, right? And I remember the one really pissed me off badly, and then I went into a break, and I was not a person to be involved in fights. Actually, I've never been in a fight. But I remember that he was going on and on and on. So I went, called him. He turned around and punched him in the face. And then I walked away. And then the teacher saw me, and then I was in trouble. But then I was like, well, look, he's bothering me all the time, and no one do anything, you know. So I remember this when I was watching the movie. And I think it's good that now these days is kind of like we are more aware of those things, because sometimes you said something but you don't know how the other person is taking it, right? I mean, in the neighborhood, they were calling me Little Whale, and I was laughing about that, you know, because every one of us has a name, and we know there was like not offensive, but in the other point, it could be sometimes offensive if like, I don't know, if you don't know the person or sometimes it's the way you say it more than what you are saying.
Right. Yeah, there was a culture of bullying, and especially I'm pretty much the same age as Oskar. Oskar would be about a year or two older than me, maybe at the most. And like, think about the films we used to watch back then. My Bodyguard, remember that? I mean, it's just like a culture of bullying. Even like, say, the original Bad News Bears. I mean, it was just that. Yeah, that's life. You're gonna get bullied. You just deal with it until you're old. That was just the way it was back then. And I got the shit bullied out of me. Really terrible.
And what was the advice they gave us? They're like, pick the biggest one out of the group and hit him in the face.
Yeah, fight back or just deal with it until you get old. Yeah.
I mean, bullying's been around for years and years and years. I mean, it's not a new thing. It's not, if you talk to your parents, they'll talk about what some of the stuff there. Grandparents will tell you about bullying when in there. I mean, bullying's always been around, sort of thing. I mean, I was always quite lucky, sort of thing, because I was horrible. I mean, if I got bullied, I kind of like beat the shit out of people. I mean, I was kind of violent when I was younger. So people kind of left me alone. But at the same time, I always knew if anyone, I think also there's a difference between vocal bullying and physical bullying. Physical bullying is, I think that basically if it does come to point to physical bullying, and unfortunately when it comes to parents, normally the parents of the bullies tend to be sticking up for their bullying children, sort of thing, which unfortunately doesn't do anything. And then what happens is when you do retaliate, what happens is the bullying parents end up coming after you as well, because look, you hit little Johnny and little Johnny's innocent. But then right there, that does show you that there's stuff going on at home, that basically situation as well. What I found when it came to people who ever tried to vocally bully me, that I was always the kind of person that you can yell anything to me. I mean, even today, you can call me anything you want in the street. You can, scream, I've had people scream faggot at me every once in a while, or just scream horrible things or whatever. I don't care, because I don't care. Call me anything you want. It doesn't bother me. Now, if it was someone I cared about, that's different. It's like, I know that person, that's different. But I always found that I didn't react to it. So therefore, like, they stop. They don't know what to do, because it's like, oh, he's not reacting because they're not getting action. But if you ever know them bullying, it's never one-on-one. It's always a group against one, sort of thing.
Right.
So it's like, look at me. I got a big dick. Look what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go pick on the person that I think might be weak. But the thing is, as soon as you show that you're not weak, then unfortunately it embarrasses them. And I was quite lucky that I was quite quick on my feet. So if they would say anything to me, I'd be like, oh, I go, sorry, I didn't hear you because your ignorance is showing through. Or I say something stupid like that to them, and all their friends would start laughing at them. I remember one time I was walking to work by the hospital, and I had these workers, and this guy would say faggot to me like 4 days in a row. And I just looked at him. I go, listen, if you're going to call me names, can you just mix up? There's fudge packer, queer bait. I just went through all these really bad games.
Mix it up with
I'm really bored with this. And his friends started laughing. And after that, he said nothing because he was like demeaned in front of his friends. And I was like, call me something else. Just come up with something new, something original. Just make it new.
Make it new. Yeah.
That was it. But then, but then again, if he was like threatening me with violence, then we would be having a different conversation here, sort of thing. And I think now with bullying, there's also, there's social media bullying, which I really don't understand, because I just think if someone's social media bullying, I don't understand why you just don't delete them and block them from your page. I don't understand that.
It's because when you go to school the next day, everyone's looking at you and whispering and talking about the shit that so-and-so posted about you. It's not like you even know what it's happening. You know what I mean? They're doing it without you even being aware of it sometimes.
But I'm also saying there's enough evidence there, because nothing gets scrubbed off of the web, as we know. I think Chad remembers that when I had a defamation piece put on the web about me.
Oh yeah,
that's still there. It's always going to be there. I just point people to it now. It's like, I go, if you want to know anything bad about me, just go to this website.
Oh yeah, for real, man. That was some insane stuff.
Yeah.
I used to watch a program, right? And each episode they talk a different subject, and then there was one that, well, few of them they're talking about bullying because one person was getting bullied all the time, and it ended up happening that the person who was bullying him all the time is because at home she was being bullied by her mother.
Yep.
So because there's something that they need to kind of release, they like copy that in other situations. Yeah. And also I remember that when one of you were talking, and I remember the school that sometimes, for example, I have some classmates that were bullying other people all the time, and in meetings you could hear the parent thinking, "Oh yes, my son is really respectful." It's like their son were like the best, right? And between all the classmates, you realize that those people were like normal, or not even like the kind of normal. They were like shit people, like, and not really bright as the parent used to think they were. So I imagine also it's also about insecurities. I know they said, for example, what you hate in others is not the others, is what you hate in you, seeing in others. So I've never been bullied much, and I wasn't even like paying attention, like.
I personally kind of played both sides of the fence. I was a little bit of a bully, and I was bullied a little bit. So I kind of played both sides of the fence, if I'm honest. I mean, we had this kid who used to smell of urine, and we used to invite him over. We would hide in the ditch, and when he ride his bike over to our house, we would put a stick in spokes of his bike and watch him flip over and land. And that's pretty horrible. But at the same time, he would every time we called, he would come over. And
I keep saying that we need to do that to the governor in Texas. We need to put a stick in his spokes.
My mom was a cruel child, because she actually told me the other day that when she was a kid, she would lock all her friends in the garden shed and then laugh.
In the closet, I'd be downstairs watching television. My mom, she goes, "I haven't heard from your sisters," and they'd be locked in the closet for like 3 or 4 hours, And but then again, I had one sister, Kelly. If you're listening to this, I'm sure you're not going to have it. I would tell her, I go, I'll give you $1 to put your tongue on the electric fence, and she would every single time. She'd get shocked and land on her ass and cry and go, "I'm fine." And my mom was going on, and I always said, "I don't know what she's going on about," sort of thing. But then I would wait a week and do it all over again, and she'd just do it again. So, I mean, I was a bit of, so I did do a little bit of, which is kind of horrible. And, I do, when you get older, you realize that you're, you were an asshole. But so, like a Monty Python thing. Like, why they kept coming over? Why does he keep doing it? Why?
On a literary sense, do you think that Lindqvist was trying to say something when he has... when Oskar for the first time sticks up for himself when they're trying to put him in the water, at the same exact time, the little innocent girls find the corpse frozen. So he's sticking up for himself for the very first time. And at the same time, this innocence over here is being destroyed by finding this body, by finding an act of violence. And so I felt like he was maybe saying something about the dichotomy of sticking up for yourself and the dichotomy of bullying.
I think that is more connected with what I can't remember the name. The girl, the vampire, talking. You need to stand up for yourself and hit them. And sometimes it's like Inception. Like someone plants the idea on you and never happens straight away. Maybe you need time to
process it.
And then happen.
I'm talking about in a poetic sense.
Yeah,
a metaphorical sense.
I also think that it also has to deal with Oskar. It also talks about, I think it's a form of puberty as well. I'm not talking about sexual puberty, I'm calling mental puberty. So basically, is once you stand up for yourself, and then basically you get retribution for that. Your mind, all of a sudden you go through like a mental puberty right there. That's okay. Now you're becoming more grown up, and you're looking at things, and put that against the young girl. That once you see the dead body and you see the humor of that, and you find out what the real meaning of life, that is another form of puberty within life, within a lifespan sort of thing. Not sexual puberty at all here, but a mental puberty where basically you now graduated from the innocence of youth, as what you're saying, into adulthood, or the start of adulthood.
Oh, he says that, just like you say.
Retribution is basically when you come up with the retribution, that is a planned retribution. With Oskar, it was kind of a planned retribution. He knew, this kind of leads up to this point, so he knows it's going here. So basically, this is him, all of a sudden, he's gone from the innocence of a child and being bullied to now taking control of the situation. And then you have of course, what you said with the innocence of the little girl. And once you do find the faces of death, and you do see that, I mean, that does, it's a bit like when your pet, when you have a pet that gets hit by a car, and and you're a child, and that kind of brings in the puberty of life, sort of thing. It's like now have an understanding of life and death.
Yes, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's a rite of passage for sure.
Like the cartoon, The Snowman, when you see the snowman melted at the end, and it signifies like there is life and death, and even though it's for small kids to watch, but it just shows about death. Do you think it's a bit like the ending of It Chapter 1, where the kids all come together and they make a pact, and they've shown fear in the face, and then they're going to become adults in like 27 years' time, sort of thing?
Well, the thing is, there's certain milestones in your life that once you've hit that milestone, whether it's death or whatever you're going through, that that's going to change the way you look at life, and you'll never be able to look at life the same way ever again.
Yeah.
And you can watch, Old Yeller as much as you want to, but that's not gonna, you can sit there and you can have an understanding and a feeling for this, and it might make you cry. But until your pet dies, or someone close to you dies, or something like that, you really don't know the enormity of death until it actually happens closely to you. And you actually have to face,
a pain you can't explain. Yeah, you're right, Keith. It's a pain you just can't explain. It's a, like someone close to you dying, and and then you start to realize like life's about sort of saying goodbye. That's a bit depressing. No, but it's true. It's like you seem to get when you get older, you seem to get to know more dead people than you do live people, if you know what I mean. Well, the older it's true. Sorry, a bit of a dark side there.
I know. I think I felt the same thing when I went to see The Rise of Skywalker. I felt that my childhood had been completely just murdered.
Yeah. Oh no. You got to stay child at heart. That's for sure.
Disney won't let me.
Women actually looks at it also is another thing about single parenting, which actually became a thing in the 80s, which became, I know my parents divorced me by 72. By the time I finished school, it's like all my friends' parents were divorced. But I remember being the only kid in school that parents were divorced. And then, by the 80s, that became like a regular thing. So we have the fatherlessness, which is basically Generation X. I mean, it's very rare that all of us, I'm a Generation X. I know Chad is as well.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
very rare that any of our parents are still together.
Yeah.
Same thing. My mother throughout my life has had 9 divorces. I'm not exaggerating in the slightest. Oh. She's had more divorces than there are Beatles Revolution songs. All right. It's, but I remember being in the first grade and, my mom being single and she was working a night shift. And, here I am. I can't remember how old I was in the first grade, but here I am. She's working nights. I'm staying the night by myself. I'm cooking my own dinner. I'm getting myself ready for school and going. And then I look at like modern children today and just how coddled they are. And I'm like, man, they would not survive in like 1979 at all.
They call them the snowflake generation.
I'm like, I hate to keep bringing it back to sexuality and stuff, but is this me? Is this just me? Or was there hints that the father was supposed to be gay and that was his lover?
See, this is in the book. I kind of, didn't really know a little too much because the book kind of had a thing in the movie. It kind of points more to that direction, sort of thing for me. Yeah. In the movie, in the book, I didn't know if it was homosexual or he was more in love with alcohol than he was with his son.
Oh, definitely the alcohol, yeah, but
because his friend shows up and he's like, "Oh, you're here," and then it's like, and then his friend comes out with the alcohol bottle, and then it turns into something that I said comes across like homosexual. But then when I start I read this when I was reading this again, fresh from there. The first time I thought, oh God, that's something weird. Is there something? Are they gonna like sleeping in the bed together later? Because Oscar leaves, doesn't he? So we don't know what happens to those two. But I thought it was more like that. But then on reflection here, I got thinking more. Could it be like the alcoholism, that he was in love with the alcohol, not the friend, sort of thing? Because now here's the alcohol.
That's interesting.
He called his dad a werewolf. He said,
my friend Jack Daniels.
But then we don't really know. I mean, and this is what's quite interesting. We have all these, backstories and stories being thrown out, but we never really understand why Oscar's parents divorced. We don't have any. We don't know about that at all.
But did you find interesting? For me, it was interesting when I was watching the movie that when he hit the other classmate in the face, and from the school they called to the mom. She's saying, "Well, what do you want from me? He doesn't have a father,
right?
Well, he has a father, but it's like a kind of like the father doesn't know anything, and he doesn't even tell his mom that they're bullying at school. He just said that he fell on a rock or something like that. So,
well, see, this is another thing. Is that Oscar has a father, but he basically, even though the father's alive, and he lives about an hour away, sort of thing. But we do have a father that kind of, when he does phone Oscar, it's kind of out of sense of duty, out of then sense of love.
Yeah.
And basically, I think when he goes and stays with his father, isn't it due to a point where things are really rough at Oscar? With Oscar, his mom's having a hard time dealing with what's going on with Oscar on a social matter, because everything's kind of going, things are getting really bad at school and the bullying is increasing, and she's learning about this sort of stuff. So she sends him to his father just so he could help out. So that way, thinking that the father would give Oscar, some companionship and some love and some understanding and someone to be there for him and help him. Maybe Oscar will open more to his dad because maybe it's a male thing or a boy thing. And of course that doesn't happen. And then Oscar walks all the way home. It's like, okay. It's like,
see, we used to get that all the time in the 80s, especially, kids who grew up with single parents. My mother, and I knew several other kids who had separated parents that would say the same thing. My mother would use that as a sort of punishment, like a threat. They're like, if you don't straighten up and fly right, I'm going to send you to live with your dad. Oh, no, not my dad.
Wow. Maybe
or it's another thing that your parents would do as well. I mean, especially after divorce, especially if you're a lot like your dad. My mom would sit there and go, "Oh God, you're just like your father." Okay, well, you can't win. You're either going to send me to live with someone I'm like, or I'm too much like. I can't win. But there was stigmatism going on with the mothers at the time as well. It's like there wasn't like a support or like an understanding. It'd be like, oh, okay, well, thanks for dropping Johnny off, and then the mom will go off to work, and all the other mothers go give that look to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Oh, it must be so hard. Oh, look at her. Who just or if something happens and the mother was doing successful at their job, who does she think she is? So it's one of the others. Like, she's working a menial job to make bills. Oh, there's that look of pity in her face. If she's doing better than what they thought she was, it's like, now she thinks she's better than us because she's a working mother. You know what I mean? So it's like, so that single mother can never win in any kind of circumstances and not have that much support from out there. There's that going on as well.
Anybody read Shuggy Bane?
What's what?
Shuggy Bane. It's like it won a shit ton of awards. There's a book that came out last year, but it's like this Scottish alcoholic mother raising children on her own. It has all the themes of everything you're talking about.
Sounds like an Welsh. Yeah, it's Irvin Welsh sort of like thing. Yeah, it does actually. Yeah, I think it's great if people can turn like all this, all this depression and sadness and turn it into something into art. That's a true artist,
Right.
Like Van Gogh or whatever. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, guys. You know, yeah. I think it's wonderful. I just love people like that, you know. Usama, you know, the Japanese.
Another thing I think that's quite interesting is the pedophilia side of this, because even though we have Hakan, who's basically in love with Eli is basically a 400-year-old person in a young
boy,
a young boy's body that's been mutilated into having no sex organ. So would that make Hakan a pedophile?
Okay, good.
You know, because
I think getting a blowjob from a child sex worker who's had all their teeth pulled out would make him a pedophile.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's on the checklist, I think.
That was you talk your extreme horror writer, right? Splatterpunk and stuff. That isn't I don't that's a scene, dude. That,
dude, don't tempt me.
That's fucking hard to
Matthew,
go.
don't tempt me. There. Oh my God, I'm already
steady, like, boys. Steady. Yeah.
I'm already like the black sheep of the splatterpunk community. Don't give me any ideas.
Don't get me any further down.
It's pretty dark.
Yeah.
What I didn't understand was Hakan would choose his victims to drain their bloods, but they had to be over a certain age. Were they like post-puberty or something?
Yeah.
Maybe it just tastes different. Maybe it's vintage. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, I just thought it kind of odd that the victims that he chose tend to be like 16-year-old boys.
Right.
You know, which is kind of bizarre. You know, I mean, and not that bizarre that basically like they would be 16-year-old boys, and not that you know that's bizarre in itself. But you would just think that if you're going to get blood for your female or your vampire at home to earn her love and respect and the money, it wouldn't matter who the victim would be.
Right.
Well, yeah, I suppose like you know,
maybe they wanted pure blood.
What you mean, like go to Marks and Spencers rather than a co-op?
Than
like a reduced item or something.
I don't know. Like pure innocence.
There were rules about the blood. The person had to be alive when the blood was spilled.
Yeah.
If you took the blood from that person, it was bad.
Yeah, didn't
there's that fabulous scene where she gets high on the morphine. I gotta love that scene. Sit on the sofa watching a TV with her, and the lady puts her head in her lap. So surreal and weird.
Another thing with Hakan, which is quite weird, is that even though he's in love with Eli, and there's no sexualness going on between them outside of
the kids,
but it's almost like the pedophile that he is, because we know that that's where he's going for. But at the same time, he's living with something. It's a bit like an alcoholic living in a liquor store,
right?
Busman's holiday. Yeah,
that's a choice. We can do that.
You didn't know about that.
Which I thought was quite interesting, because it's like he's got something. Of course, it does. You know, when Hakan goes to kill himself, and of course he doesn't die, and unfortunately he becomes a mindless vampire himself. And of course, you know, when he tries to rape Eli and stuff like this, and how that transpires, and all of a sudden, it's like all that sexual urge that he's been ever since he's been in him and Eli been together, it's turned into this sort of thing. And then, of course, you know, like a volcano eruption, which I thought was very, very clever, the way that he was able to write that in and, you know, lead this up. And then we get this scene here.
Brilliant.
Another thing I quite liked is the socioeconomic classes as well, and what we have with the crew that were hanging around together at the pub, and they go to the pub every night, and then, you know, and then we get, you know, the female, what's her name? Virginia. There we go, Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
And then Virginia basically starts turning, and when the cat's turning against her, and she basically, and then she did it, how she commits suicide. And I thought that was quite an interesting way of doing it, sort of thing. You know, to like burn herself alive and just open the curtains and let herself go. Which it's kind of weird, because Virginia, up at that point, she's kind of like just the woman that's hanging around this group of men. And she's, you know, the guy who won't commit to her. She's kind of like the weak woman. And then what we get is the most strongest thing anyone can do is to sacrifice yourself in that way and you got to remember the Viking is, the rite of death is to, you have to burn the body to purify the body.
Go to Valhalla. Yeah. It's like you give yourself to Odin, to Valhalla,
So like she did the responsible thing.
She did the responsible thing, but she also did the most mature thing of almost anyone in this book, sort of thing. Because all the adults they come across as adults, but the mother is kind of she's the mother of Oskar. She's doing what she can. She's doing the best she can, but she's not the ultimate adult, is she? She's trying to juggle. The father of Oskar is an alcoholic. This group of men are basically down at the pub every day, and they're talking about bettering lives, and they're talking about having a better life. They're not really doing anything about having a better life. They're just kind of like, and then, and the one that they look down on, where Virginia, she's kind of like the woman who's just hanging around them, sort of thing. She's just hanging around there for God knows, they come, and they also feel like they're just put up with her. She's just there. But then she ends up doing the most adult thing that any of the adults do in this whole book. Basically, take responsibility for what happened, and basically, burns herself alive in the most horrible way possible. Because when a vampire burns to death, they don't burn from the outside in; they burn from the inside out. So it's like,
oh my gosh.
With the bone, basically the bones start turning the ash, this starts thing, which is, if you've ever had bone pain, bone pain is probably the worst pain you can ever have, sort of thing, because it's, it's like a cold wind. So I thought, I like the way that the author was able to do that. And this is one of those things that, again, when I read it the first time, I kind of read it, when you read things for first time, and it kind of washes over you and you pick things up. But when you read it the second time, you start noticing little juxtapositions I didn't notice before.
Absolutely.
And I have to sit there and say that after reading this book a second time, now I want to go back through and start reading all his other books again, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like the vampire folklore. It's really interesting. It is quite, I remember in Ed Wood, I remember the character was playing Bela Lugosi. He was saying, if you want to make out Eddie, take a girl to see Dracula, because they relate to the blood. blood's the main thing, isn't it? It seems like blood's the most precious thing on the planet, I guess.
It's blood's a life force.
Monotonic.
Life force for all breathing beings. Before we give our ratings, what about the retaliation in the pool sequence at the end? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it was justified, or do you think it was Eli went too far?
Huh.
I mean, we all wanted to see it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
It's unanimous.
We were waiting for it, but is anything justified? Is there really good and evil? I mean,
Well, yeah,
they get into those kids' life. They had the tough life. He burnt their photo album. He's not exactly innocent, is he? But
Oscar's not innocent. Oskar retaliated. No one is. But then again, the boy that is bullying Oskar is being savagely bullied himself, older brother.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And it just continues, and it's like a proliferation. It's
and even when it's the brother holding him down, and the younger brother doesn't really want that much part of it, but the younger brother gets the retribution just as much as the older brother does.
Uh-huh.
So I found that quite an interesting look at it, sort of thing, because I think if this was like an American written book or something like that, I got a feeling that the younger one probably would have ran away and would never have faced the wrath of what happened. But because I think it's European, and if you've seen European horror, it seems to be a little bit more graphic and a lot more. It's very rare a happy ending in a European horror anyway, sort of thing. Whether it's Switchblade Romance or Haute Couture, depending on or Martyrs or Livid or so on and so forth. But but for me, I have to sit there and say that I kind of sorry for the younger brother who's doing the bullying to Oskar. Not that he deserved punishment, but I thought that punishment kind of went far and above beyond. It made it an exciting read, though. But
beyond karma.
But it's only because I think because the author kind of goes inside his head and says he doesn't want to, and you find out that he doesn't want to be a part of this, that he's been pushed into this, and he's really like, and he always says something about, he does ask his brother, don't, he's trying to stop it at the same time, and he can't because the brother's like overpowers him anyway. So, and then to have him part of the massacre, it's kind of like bittersweet sadness still to something for me personally. So. So I guess this brings us to how we're going to rate Let the Right One In. So out of 5-star rating, let's find out how each of us rates this. Starting with you, Leandro, how do you rate Let the Right One In, the novel?
4.5, because it's the first time I read something like that take place in Sweden. I don't read books about vampires. I just read before Interview with the Vampire. And I really like it. I like it how it mix different topics like, vampires and all the things that we have been chatting in a really cool way. So, yes, 4.5.
And what about your Chad? How many do you rate this?
Well, first of all, I spoke to your co-host Vicky last night, and she said since she couldn't be here today, she wanted me to put in her 2 cents and say that she rated this film 4 edibles instead of stars. And I since we're going to go away from the whole star rating system, I would rate this movie 4 castrated penises because first of all, like I said, from the very beginning of the show, I began this journey with the American film, which was enjoyable. I like Chloe Grace Moretz. I liked her in Kick-Ass. She was the daughter I always wished I could have in that movie. So, I'm like, I liked Let Me In. It was okay. And then I watched the Swedish film and I liked it a lot more. Then I read the book and it just really hit home. So as far as personal experiences and growing up and how the crazy things work in my brain, it's a 5, man. The book is a 5.
And what about yourself, Craig? What do you rate it?
I really enjoyed it, and I would give it. I'll give it 5 edibles.
Yourself, David?
Yeah, I think anyone who can, well, I know nowadays it's gone past the sort of pen to paper, but anyone who can sit down and sort of just envisage and sort of put together a book deserves 5 puncture holes, you know, and 5 bites. I think definitely 5. It's just great, you know, and as you say, it's taking an old topic, or not so old topic, but maybe a fairly well used topic, like, you know, with what's happened over in Hollywood and everything about vampires, and just really kind of brought it down to a ground level and give it that coolness that it needs, you know, because that's Sweden, you know, it's beautiful up there, you know. I'll give it 5.
What about yourself, Matthew? How do you rate it?
Easily 5 ounces of purple Hindu Kush. Absolutely. And I like the heat. Yeah, well, we'll do the film next, I guess. But the coldness of Sweden. I thought the film that's where it really excelled. But I guess we'll do that in a minute. But it takes the vampire myth and uses it to explore society in so many ways, from gender issues to bullying to mutilation, to parents, to divorce, to relationships. It's so deep, and I think it's a great example of how the horror genre could be art, can dissect society and hold a mirror up, and absolutely fabulous book. Love it.
For me, I'm going to give this 5 stars. Let the Right One In novel is one of those things I think needs to be considered a modern classic. I think from years to come, I hope that it does get that moniker. That's, you know, one of those mandatory readings. 2004 for me was a very good year. This is also 2 of my most favorite modern fiction books came out at that time. Was Let the Right One In. The other one was The Book Thief, another fantastic book that I loved as well. But Let the Right One In, I sit there and, you know, it turned me on to this author. I can't stop reading the author. I want to know more about this author. Everything that he comes out with, I read and love, because it's just taking horror and moving it forward and giving it a modern take and spin on it without basically, you know, coming in with your own voice and stuff like this. And it's nice that, you know, and I'm finding it a lot now with a lot of the new authors and stuff like this that are coming out. I think I read your book, Matthew. I read Chad, and there is a new voice in horror that has emerged now. And you 2 are also included in that. John Emerson.
Thank you.
And basically, they're taking horror and turning it into a modern age. We're not, you know, we move past the Stephen King and the Clive Barker sort of thing. And they're excellent. There's nothing away with it, but they're moving things to a modern stance. And it's good that, you know, we do have authors that are taking things and making it modern. That before 2000, basically, if you wanted to read horror, you had to go back to the 70s or the 80s or the classics, Love Poe. And now because everything else kind of was a copy of that, but now we got the new voice and the new thing. And Lindqvist, I believe, was the kind of one. He's kind of like the person who's like kind of heralding that to a modern classic, and then everyone else is making their own voices now within horror. That's why I think Let the Right One In should be mandatory reading if you're a horror fan. And if you're a fiction fan, I also think that you don't need to be a horror fan to enjoy this either, because it's a book that actually crosses so many different genres within its own thing. And yes, it does have the horrorness going through this, but it has a social economic understanding of it. It has a review of the 1980s. It has a fiction, you know, a masterful 80s fiction Booker Prize kind of thing, themes going through it as well. And that's why I think Let the Right One In is one of those books that probably should be, you know, read by almost everyone. And even if you hate horror, I think Let the Right One In will be something that you would actually enjoy and get so much out of it. And then you come away feeling well fed after reading it as well. It doesn't leave you empty, and it does leave you hopeful. And it does kind of put a little, you know, the last paragraph I remember of Let the Right One In after reading it the first time and the second time, you kind of left with a slight little smile on your face when basically Oscar's on the train and Eli's, you know, in this suitcase, and off they go.
Yeah. yeah. Like saying, yeah. Like that. It continued to travel around the world and have adventures.
Yeah. And you know, we do get like a short story that does mention them that, you know, as Matthew's saying, and I do agree with him, it doesn't kind of live up to expectation. It's one of those things that you want to know more, but we hope that we never get a sequel book to this.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Because it ends perfectly every time. Like Owen Meany. I love the Prayer for Owen Meany is one of my favorite books. And so isn't Widow for a Year, but I never want to see a sequel to those because even though they tear away my heartstring, my heart gets pulled out of my chest every time I read these. I don't need to hear what happens to them afterwards because that is perfect enough in every single way. Well, this brings us to the right one in the film, which is a 2008 Swedish romantic horror film directed by Tomas Alfredson. It was based on a 2004 novel. Lindqvist also wrote the screenplay. The film tells the story of a bullied 12-year-old boy who develops a friendship with a strange child in Blackeberg, a suburb of Stockholm in the early 1980s. The film adaptation of Lindqvist's novel began in development in 2004 when John Nordling acquired the rights to produce the project. Alfredson, unconcerned with the horror and vampire conventions, decided to tone down many elements of the novel and focus primarily on the relationship between the two main characters and explore the darker side of humanity. Selecting the lead actors involved a year-long process with open casting held all over Sweden. In the end, Kjell Havenbeck and Lena Landerson were chosen for the leading roles. Landerson's role in the film was dubbed by Ila Kanya, whose principal photography took place in 2007, said that her role was one of the most perfectly actresses of anyone of our time and anyone in the future. The film was produced by Swedish Television and with support from Swedish Film Institute, the Nordvisk Film and TV Foundation, WEG, and Canal Plus. Let the Right One In would premiere on the Gothenburg Film Festival on 26th of January 2008, where it received the Nordic Film Prize. It was released in Sweden on 24th of October 2008 by Sander Matadom. The film received critical acclaim with praise for the performance of the two leads, the cinematography, screenplay, and direction. It won several awards, following the Founders Award for Best Narrative Feature at the Tribeca Film Festival, as well as 4 Goldberg Awards, including Best Director, Best Cinematographer, Best Screenplay, and it also won Saturn Award for Best International Film, an Empire Award for Best Horror Film at the 63rd British Academy of Film Festival. The film was nominated for Best Film, not in the English language, and an American remake titled Let Me In was directed by Matt Reeves and released in 2010. And we cut to the trailer. I'll sit there and say fuck you to the American Academy Awards for not part of their foreign screenplay because they thought that a horror film should never be nominated in their prestigious foreign film category, and that's the reason why it wasn't. So now we're going to cut to the trailer. I've let the right one in, and we were right back.
Är du vampyr? Hade du tyckt om mig ändå? Vill du bli ihop med mig?
Hello, welcome back to the Literary License Podcast, where we're talking about Let the Right One In, the film from 2008. And we'll start with you, Craig. What are your thoughts of the film Let the Right One In from 2008?
This film, I thought it was a great film, and the cinematography by Hoyt van Hoytema, I thought it was absolutely amazing. They just got it so right, and the location, for example, reminded me of a place in England that we nicknamed Concrete Jungle, which is in Bermondsey, where it's these little, it's very just like what David said about Lego blocks.
Yeah.
It's very
like the Pete Seeger song, Little Boxes.
And I was wondering in the film, like, where are all the people, for example? But the film, the sense that I got, the emotion that I got from the film was almost like serenity. It was so, everything was crisp, and there wasn't too much incidental music or an overarching score or anything. It was really minimalist, and even the trees were, the composition of the trees, for example, in some of the shots, when the boy's hanging upside down, I think it's in one of the film posters as well, you can just see it was just a beautiful film. I was rooting for Oskar for I really, I know it sounds a bit disturbing, but I wanted him to be bitten and then turn and then seek revenge on people. I was really rooting for him, but I really liked the interplay and how the actual outcome was fine as well. It was just brilliant. But my favorite scene of the film was when the girl asked to be let in and he was contemplating it, and then all the blood came from her, like her nose and her eyes, and then you realize how vulnerable that she really is, even though she's this powerful being. And it was a really interesting interplay on power and innocence and stuff, and it was just really beautifully done. I even when it had finished, I thought, wow, that was a brilliant film. So yeah, that was my take. It's funny. I'm glad it won the awards that it was done for. But it was just, even the location. I mean, it was. I mean, the coldness and the location stuff, and it was just a really beautiful piece of cinematography there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like Craig said, when I mean, the vampire has to be invited in. Yeah, but she's like, there's a guy here, Peter Bradshaw from The Guardian, he described it as a hemophilia of rejection. Pretty heavy sort of stuff, but just great. Just the location is brilliant, and also for me, I'll just give you a little picture of Blackeberg Station, which features in the movie, and it actually looks like a mouth. It almost looks like a mouth with the teeth showing, which is quite strange. I don't know if I think since we've been doing the podcast and been talking to you guys, I'm looking at things in a different way, because you talk about lots of things, like kind of a bit abstract, and it's really interesting. You look at things a bit differently, That's really interesting, That's the great thing about the writer's mind, you guys. And I think it's like it just makes you sort of like get a new eye. I like that, It's really interesting, because I look back on like old movies like Blade Runner or something and think, oh boy, I didn't see that bit last time. Now it's been pointed out, like, and stuff, But I was on the side of Oskar also. I just wanted everything to come right from, but beautiful movie.
Yeah, don't praise us writers too much. It's mostly the weed.
Well, it's talking to you. It is an entity.
What about yourself, Matthew? What are your thoughts of the film?
Oh, I adore this film. It's funny. The first time I saw it, I had never heard of it before. Yeah. And it had just come out on Netflix. And this is actually when Netflix mailed you DVDs before there was streaming. And I remember the description said, Oscar's obsessed with serial killers, and now a serial killer's moved to his town. And that's all I knew about the movie. I was like, well, I like serial killers. So and it blew me away. I mean, I was just, and the weird thing is, I actually had the swine flu at the time. That shit was messed up. Like I was like in a hallucinatory state, and that film just, it changed me. It blew me. It opened my mind. It blew me away. I thought I was seeing Shakespeare, Dickens. Just so many things going on in there, and I loved it.
And what about yourself, Leandro? What are your thoughts of the film?
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. It was really interesting for me that when he was cutting, the piece of paper, and he had like a special folder where he was collecting all those pieces of news, and then at the beginning, when the police officer asked them something to the class, and he was the only one who knows, how could you identify, I think, someone has been in a fire or something like that. Really enjoyed when he hit the boy that was bullying him, and it was really interesting how, like, to me, it's like he hit him, cut the ear, and the boy was crying, I don't know, as he had been shot, right? And basically how kind of like, probably that's what I imagine. He went and told his brother that this man has cut his ear, and now he's the victim, right? And really loved the end when she appeared and like killed them all. You can see the arm like going down the water. I really like the effect of some effects, it's like, I really like when, sometimes either you have really good effects or you don't have the effects, but you have a really good way to tell the story without like a big budget, like, for example, you see that arm going down, you realize that she chopped it all, like, or the head. Or you see the feet going on the water, which means that she was flying and drag him to the end of the pool. Really interesting. Where is set the story, because also I think it's kind of like give you like a kind of roughly idea how is the life there. I really not a huge fan or thinking about thinking of, okay, the life in that place is like that, just because. There is a movie that I haven't seen yet, which is called Fargo, right? And then I went to work to North Dakota, and I haven't seen the movie. But when I arrived there, I told them, there is a movie called Fargo. She said, yes, they said, North Dakota is not like that. We don't feel identified with that movie. So I think it's like when someone watch a movie that is from a place that you don't know, probably it's not a really good idea to think that, okay, it's like that. Like Sweden is like that. I think it's much more. I think it's like kind of like, I don't know. It's like a fine line, Really, really enjoy how, as I said before, how the author, well, the director in this case, put together the things, and a much, I don't know, a vampire story with crime, with something, the problems that we're having in the society these days. It was, I don't know, what do you think? I'm going to ask you, we can talk about. For me, it was really interesting because at the end of the movie, it's like, okay, this man that was with this girl, at the beginning I thought maybe he could be her dad, I don't know. But for me, when he was in the hospital, she went and said, okay, kind of like, I saw it like that, this is your end. And he gave her the neck so she could have food. And it's kind of like now she got someone else, which is the right one, that she would never attack.
Well, what was supposed to happen in that sequence, in the book itself, is that Haken he had to disfigure himself because he was going to get caught. So basically, he wanted Eli to drain him of all his blood, so that way it would kill him. So basically, he's offering his life to Eli, and so he would die and Eli would live. But unfortunately, due to the fact that they were interrupted, that's why Haken gets turned at that point, which was not the intention. He was supposed to give his life up for Eli, but because that didn't happen and it got interrupted and all his blood wasn't drained, he turned into a vampire himself. So that's what happens there. So we get we kind of get a movie that's fantastic on its own, but the book kind of fills in some of the spacing that goes on, sort of thing, as you notice, sort of thing.
I can't wait for the showtime. Hopefully they do it all, man.
What about yourself, Chad? What are your thoughts of the film?
Well, and I said earlier in the episode that my first introduction to this work was the Matt Reeves American film, which it's exactly that. It's an American film. It it focuses mainly on like the police officer that's trying to solve this crime, and there's a heavy romantic relationship between the two main characters, which, I mean, they even changed their names in the American version just to make it American. I don't know why we're so scared of our own genitals in this country, but we totally are. And my wife had seen Let the Right One in a film class in college, and we were discussing Let Me In, and she's like, "Oh, I think I've seen the foreign version of this film." And we watched Let Me In, and she's like, no. She's like, "You need to see the original." So I watched the original, and then waited and read the book when I'd been invited to be on this show. And the Swedish version, oh my God, man, there is no comparison. No offense against Matt Reeves, who directed the American version. I love Cloverfield. I'm going to see the Batman tonight. I mean, Matt Reeves is a great filmmaker, but he is an American. He's in that American mindset. The Swedish version of this film is one of the best vampire movies I've ever seen in my life. It gets past some of the old tired like stereotypes of previous vampire films and takes you in a completely new direction. If you're one of those kids who had a hard time growing up, you can relate to the characters in this show. I highly recommend it. I mean, just move past. And this is another problem here in America where people don't want to read subtitles. I don't want to have to read my movies. That's exactly what they sound like. Take a chance on this film and watch it. Yes, you have to read. I get it. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult, Alabama, but just give this film a chance. It's amazing.
Myself, I read the book first. And I came across the book basically I used to go to the bookstore, and then there'd be like 4 books for 20 quid. I got this, The Book Thief, and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and another book. So then the film came out, and I thought, and I think it was playing here at the Everyman, which is an art house cinema. So I thought, oh, I'll go see that. I read the book, and I have to sit there and say, when I first saw the movie, I was a bit disappointed because I read the book first, and there was so much left out. But I did buy the deep, but the thing is, the movie haunted me long after I watched it, though. The book haunted me, and the movie was haunting me in a different way. And then the DVD came out. I bought the DVD and watched it at home and loved it. And because I had a bit of a space and my expectations, I then realized that we have something very special here, because what we have is a fantastic movie that deals with everything that unfolds like a flower blooming very, very slowly, and it unfolds in front of you with these comfortable magnificence. Everything's done in a silence, within a silence, and what unspoken quality about it. But then we also got something that's a screenplay written by the author of the book. And what we have basically is a companion piece that they're like a companion piece for each, and they fit like hand in glove with each other. And I look at the movie now, it's like one of my, I think it's one of the best horror films that we've had within the last 20, 30 years, really, because we got something that's so fantastic of its time. It's its own thing. And, the cat sequence in the movie, maybe they could have spent a little bit more on the CGI there, but it doesn't really take away from anything, because it's rewatching that. I always kind of cringe at the cat sequence in this movie a little bit. It doesn't take me out of the movie or anything like that. It's like, oh, they could have done that better. It's kind of like that, and I move on. But watching it this time, I actually noticed that cat sequence actually kind of fits in with this. This movie has a Grimm's fairy tale view to it. There's a Grimm's fairy tale view, and that cat kind of fits into this Grimm fairy tale. Yeah, and I never actually realized that the first time. I said before, the first time I was like, "Oh my god, they left this out of the book." You know what you do when you read a book and then see movie. Oh, they could have done it, and they had enough time. But then another thing I realized on this feeling is that this film is almost 2 hours long, and it doesn't feel like a 2 hour long film.
Not at all.
So when I first came out of it, I really thought that they had, they could add another 30, 40 minutes to it. It wouldn't make a difference. I realized that 120 minutes is like, we're lucky we got 120 minutes, because normally they would cut something like this down to 90 if they're lucky for a horror film. And so I find that this is a fantastic, beautiful film that's a great companion piece to the book, and the book is a great companion piece to the film. And we got something that we very rarely get. I think the only time we ever get this kind of a companion piece is when John Irving wrote the screenplay for Cider House Rules, and then we got the movie Cider House Rules, directed by Lars Hallström, a Swedish director. And that was like the perfect fit as well. There's like, you got this thing that they complement each other. You can read the book and get so much more, but yet you can watch the film without reading the book and then get so much more out of it as well, and fill in your own blanks. And then when you realize that the blanks that you filled in because they're not in the film, that when you do read the book, the blanks that you filled in are there in the book.
Widow for a Year was kind of like that too. Another John Irving. Did you see that movie, The Hole in the Floor?
Yeah.
And it was just the one little section of the book,
Yeah, that's the from Widow for a Year. So
that's one of my favorite books of all time.
Widow for a Year.
Yeah, made me cry so many times.
If you want to know anything about writing despair, anxiety, loss, read the first 100 pages of Widow for a Year, when he's taking his daughter and they're going through the stories of the blank wall where the mother's taking all the pictures of the dead brothers, and they go through the story, and there's this loss and this emptiness, and this the way that's described. I mean, it just tears your heart apart. And it's one of the most, that's what I love about Widow for a Year. And it's like
it needs more bears though.
Yeah.
He's always got the bears.
You always got bears and
bears,
sex.
boobies. Bears, boobies, and wrestling.
Yeah.
Well, bear with us. Yeah. They will come. Bear with us.
And the sex is never. But the sex is never normal either. It's always like with someone.
Not with bears.
It's an older women.
Tasha Kinski in a bear suit.
I'll
bear roll. Don't worry. Sorry. Yeah. So, but it's funny with
Walrus in the dark. They all
it's funny with 70%
the open windows.
Sorry. I just said 70%. Sorry, 70. Sorry, you got me on the bear now. You got me on the ropes.
Spit it out, David.
Yeah, spit that bear out. No, the 70% of the casting was actually the guy was talking about being a musician. Like he says, it's interesting how you could push B against A. And the 12-chord turnaround in blues is like you say you play A, B. It's funny how he's like, I was trying to think in my mind. I was reading that a little bit about how does A sound with B. But then again, I'm thinking, the B note is in A somewhere, so that was interesting. That's his cast. See the guy singing on another level. This is what I'm saying about this podcast. It makes you think about things in a different way, That's life, It shouldn't always just be very shuttered and, pigeonholed and just wrestling with bears all the time,
So, I mean, for me, Not That I Went In is just a perfect piece of filmmaking, and I love it that we also get something that we very rarely get in films, is that we get scenes that just are able to breathe and have a life of their own, And because normally, I also like it doesn't hit you over the head with stuff, it's not telling you what's going on. It's like, it's a bit, one of my biggest problems is when I watch something. And it's like you'll watch a scene, and then the next scene will be the actor telling you what happened or what you just saw. And it's like, well, we never were there. That doesn't happen here. You know what I mean? There's never that one scene in here where, they're reiterating what you just saw or just what you just experienced. They just keep moving forward and just.
It's a bit of a mystery. It's when the first time I saw it, I didn't know it was about vampires. I thought it was about serial killers. And it opens up with him in the window with the knife, and I'm like, just what the hell is happening?
Yeah. What's going on?
But the movie has the scene at the end where he does the Morse code on the trunk, and that's not in the book. He wrote the screenplay. It must have come to him after he had already published the book. You're almost like, man, you need to go back and add that or something. It's so crucial, so good.
Yeah, it's so poetic as well.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and the Morse code press is KISS, KISS. Well, Swedish.
Yeah.
I also the music references in the book. I don't know why they didn't put like Kiss and Iron Maiden and stuff in there. Maybe it's licensing. I don't know. I like the image of her in an Iron Maiden shirt. I always like, so I picture her in an Iron Maiden shirt. She's got out of the trash. Did you get this out of the trash? Yeah.
At least she didn't have an ABBA t-shirt.
No.
I like ABBA. Take a chance, take a chance, take a chance.
It came with a VHS copy of Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park.
Hell yeah, dude.
So Rock out.
I think it was on
Army
television when I remember watching that when it came on TV.
Kiss of the Vampire.
I remember watching that on the television, man, being so into it.
Oh my God. I just recently got a bootleg on DVD of Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. There's a guy on eBay that sells them for $50 a pop.
Okay.
Worth every penny, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I like that one.
Now, I'm kind of wondering because we have the ending of the book and then we got the ending of here. And of course, Matthew just mentioned that when Eli taps the word kiss to Oskar. But I find it quite interesting that Oskar taps back small kiss. Which kind of like adds now we have the short story that we mentioned earlier. And I'm kind of wondering if that had any implication of why the short story to the extra, what happens to Oskar and Eli that we get in the short story. I wonder if it has anything to do with the movie more than the book.
Right.
Because as before, this scene's not in there. But I also find it a bit weird that Eli, because Eli, the problem with Eli is that Eli may be powerful and whatever they are. But unfortunately, Eli is always dependent. There's a dependency. So before his whole creation and the way his way of living is dependent on Haken. Now with Oskar, basically her dependency is now on Oskar. If something happens to Oskar and she doesn't find someone else take care of her, Eli doesn't exist anymore. She's vulnerable. And so what I've kind of got from this is that now that Eli has to depend on Oskar, and the thing is, she's always been a bit outlandish with Oskar as far as when Oskar tried to get too close. But now with Haken gone, and now it's just the two of them, she says kiss, like kiss, and then he goes small kiss.
Small kiss.
Which is, and it almost gives like, it's a bit like, you signed your letter XXOO, and the person just signs their name. And then they write you back and just go, you're like Keith XXOO right to the person, and then the person writes back and goes Pam. That's it. No X's, no O's, and it kind of has that kind of feel to it.
I got you. So yeah.
And where the book kind of gave me a bit of a smile, this made me kind of slightly hesitate a little bit because, like, oh, okay, so is Oskar gone off Eli a little bit?
He's a dick to her throughout it. You know what I mean? When he makes her come in. He has the beginnings of a serial killer anyway. I mean, look at his scrapbook. Right.
He's
stabbing trees. She says that. She's like, "You're just like me." He's like, "I'm not like you." And she's like, "Squeal like a pig. Go on, squeal, squeal." And he's like, "I saw you stabbing the tree. I heard what you said. You're just like me."
Yeah. And I think that the movie actually, because the focus is more on Oskar and Eli, the book is, has the focus on them, but there's so many parts of the book where the film kind of just centers more on just these two people. And so I think you notice Oskar a lot more in the movie than you do in the book. I mean, the book, you know what he's going through and everything like this, but I found you got like a microphone, you had a microscope over relationship in the movie. And there's kind of a weird dynamic sort of thing.
Yeah, but he is like the protagonist really in the movie, really in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So I think in a movie you can always take it. The camera can follow wherever it wants. You can lead the camera wherever you want. In a book, I think you're trying to, like, through symbolism or symbols in itself, you're trying to sort of lead somebody down. Oh, this is how I think about something. This is how I see the world. This is how I would like you to sort of think about things, But in a movie, we all say it together as a collective thing, and then we make our interpretations.
Well, I just found in the book, we kind of have an optimistic ending for Oskar and Eli.
Yeah.
In the film, the optimism's there, but it's not quite, but it could go either way.
Yeah.
There's sourness to it.
Yeah. Because Oskar, Eli's there to help Oskar.
Yeah.
All the way through. She's not dependent on Oskar, but now she is dependent on Oskar. Now is whether Oskar is going to have enough responsibility to be there. Who knows? Because obviously Eli's feeling a lot more for Oskar than Oscar's feeling for Eli at the end of the movie.
Codependency.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
How to survive codependent relationship.
How to develop your coping mechanisms through a vampire or something.
And it's part of the brilliance of the whole thing. Yeah.
Is your lover a parasite?
Yeah, is your lover a vampire? Yeah. Love it.
We've all been in one of those kind of relationships in our life.
It makes you think a lot about things like, it's sort of, you sit on the tube sometimes, and I remember, sorry, just diverting a little bit, but I sat next to this guy. There was only one seat, and he says he was obviously wanting to talk to someone, and me being like Mr. Nutcase, he's talking to me like, he says, "I've just got out of prison, mate." I said, "Oh yeah." As you do. He says, yeah, I'm a murderer. I said, yeah, okay, great. I said, I'm a musician. It's not got much in common, I don't think, like that. Yeah, but a bit of a diversion. That was the train driver. Yeah, I got off at the next stop, of course. Yeah.
Now we do get the Haken storyline kind of diminished here.
Yeah,
we don't get the rape scene with Eli. We don't get Haken's the one that actually. He's the actual one who starts poisoning the community. Wasn't Eli? Well, so they have it, because what we do is we do get the Eli does kill Haken, which is what was intended anyway. Before in the book they get interrupted.
I think if I had read the book first, I would have been really disappointed with the movie.
I was a little bit.
It's so good, so epic. It's probably like the same way we did American Psycho last time. Like if you read the book first and you watch that movie, you're like, well, that was cute. You know what I mean? It's just
yeah. The book was amazing. Yeah, just
so good.
Yeah. Was it a composite? I mean, sorry, going back to American Psycho, was it a composite of different people, case studies that this guy built the character up around, or? Because when I was reading, I just got that feeling, it was like it wasn't one person; it was many people. He just taken all the most gruesome parts and sort of made a Frankenstein monster. Yeah,
well, he's definitely a Bundy. He's a Republican, wears a suit and tie.
Yeah, yeah. He had the charms and looks of Bundy but then there's also the case of whether any of this is really happening or is it all into the thing. I think American Psycho pretty much developed, basically is setting itself as basically is a person who thinks that there's somebody but no one knows who he is, sort of thing. And every people are not known. There's no one in that whole book that's known for their personality whatsoever. It's all about what they're wearing, and that's it. That's as far as it's all surface.
That's right. Yeah, sorry, that's right. And the business card they have, it's almost like the Fight Club thing. You are not your wallet. You are not, whatever. Yeah, it's almost like people define themselves by what they show on the exterior, but really, the true, the soul of a person, if you want to call it that. It's like the person that's always hidden from view, unless you get to know.
It's also because it does deal with the yuppies of the 80s as well.
Oh, yeah.
And in American Psycho, you have to remember that. In the 80s, yuppies were yesterday's hippies. All these people that sort of free love and everything like this became very egotistical and all about money and became the yuppies.
Yeah.
The yuppies
Abby Hoffman got a job on Wall Street.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's quite funny. So that's why when, today we get there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of idealistic things, you know, that are being said at the moment. You know, whether you agree or disagree or whatever, it's irrelevant. But I kind of wondering if, like, you know, because we are kind of having like this new 60s kind of thing with, you know, everyone's equal, everyone's this, everyone's that, and so on and so forth. And I'm kind of wondering, like, in 20 years' time, are these people going to be like the ultra conservative, like, you know, moneyalistic? You know, that's what happened in the 60s. And that's also what happened in the 20s as well. We had like this huge, you know, hedonistic, you know, society in the 20s, and then of course they became, Hays Code and, you know, communism and the Red Scare and all this stuff came through. And that basically,
depression, you know, sort of like there's
overnight to become like rigid.
You know, so, it's pride comes before a fall. You know, as in the proverb. You know, it's true. Like I think it's great to branch out. It's great to sort of expand yourself. You know, I mean, basically that's the only reason why we're here in this reality is just to expand the consciousness. You know, and all the rest is gravy. You know.
Well, I mean, the
my
thing
16-year-old says that
human race never learns anything anyway, and it repeats itself over and over.
Yeah,
you know, we go through ways. It'll be like ultra liberal and ultra conservative, and ultra liberal, ultra conservative, and it goes back and forth and everything like that. You know, meanwhile, not really attacking the real issues anyway. The real issues of the day are socioeconomic, and there's no way that you're going to equal that up, because if the social economic people, doesn't matter what your race, sexuality, or anything like that, they all joined up as one, they become the majority. And if you don't want them the majority, because the people at the top would be the minority, and they're not going to have the power they have, and you have a French Revolution going on, and blah, blah, blah. So what you do is you just keep everything very subdivided, which is what we do, you know.
There is no political solution to our troubled evolution.
My 16-year-old son's always telling me capitalism is a failed system with racism and sexism inherent in its structure, and the only way we can get over this, you know, is politically. And I'm like, yeah, you're gonna end up some yuppie scumbag. I know it, man.
Hagen does. Yeah, eat that ice cream.
I mean, I think my grandmother said it wise, that the problem with humans is that they're born with an ego. If you get rid of the ego, you might have a species that actually gets on with each other. But
it's like the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Is it better? When you watch Invasion of the Body Snatchers, do you ever think to yourself, maybe it is better? Maybe they should go to sleep. Maybe the body snatchers are the good guys, and everyone's fighting against them is bad.
Yeah.
I mean, look at bees. Look at bees and hornets and all that. I mean, they live as one hive. You know,
right.
You you never see a nature program where these bees are fighting amongst themselves in the hive.
It's true. Like,
it's inherited classism, though. You got the workers and the queen.
Yeah, maybe it should be like the Borg consciousness, you know. We'll just all get on, like, you will be assimilated. But I come from Newcastle. You'll never learn me language, man.
Nice.
Well, even if you like speak the same language and stuff like this, let's take English for instance. You'll still get bullied over what kind of accent you may have.
Of course, yes, sure.
I always said that if the whole human race all were blonde hair and blue eyed, everyone would be bullying the person whose eyelash curled just slightly different.
Yeah, exactly. I've got to find something wrong.
Oh, look at her eyelash. She's got one eyelash that curls to the right.
It goes slightly to the left.
Heritage, burn her to say.
Yeah, we're crazy, man. Crazy human beings, and I'm so happy to be here.
Never learn going forward. But I think another thing. I mean, going back to Let the Right One in the film, they did film Eli's origin story, which they did cut out of the film, which I kind of wish they kind of kept that in a little bit, because it would have made more sense when he goes, "I'm not a girl."
Okay. Yes.
The film never really expands on that sort of thing.
You see the cut. You see, there's a part where she's going in the bathroom and he looks, and you can see her nothingness, and there's a scar there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the only good thing about the scar is that it's a zigzag slant sort of thing. But if it was like straight up and down, then she could have been a girl. You know what I mean? It's kind of a weird thing. Yeah. So basically, you're only as good as how worldly your audience is.
Yeah, it was definitely some back alley surgery going on there.
It wasn't a sleepaway camp moment.
No, not at all.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I remember going to a charity event about female circumcisions, and two of my secretaries have had it done, and I saw it firsthand, sort of thing. But they had it done in a hospital. But this is about them doing it in a tribal fashion in Africa, where they do it with a broken Coke bottle and a rock.
God.
Oh, man, bloody hell, man! Flipping egg.
And I just thought to myself, "Is like, yeah, that's the kind of surgery you don't want one back home."
Definitely.
The Splatterpunk guy's taking notes, right, Chad?
Yeah, absolutely. Writing it in blood. I've gnawed off the tip of my finger, and I'm putting it on the wall.
Nice.
Bloody hell!
My family is. I mean, my mom and my mother's side of the family ran to hospitals and doctors, and so basically, for instance, I fell into the hay grinder when I was about 12, and basically the metal thing cut into my legs and cut into the bone, so basically I had this. So I kind of wobbled home and stuff like this, and my mom wouldn't take us to the hospital or any kind of doctor. They didn't believe in them because they were paranoid of them, because I'm from a backward redneck family, and or whatever you want to make of that. And so my mom basically had to hold me down. My grandfather's holding me down. My mom's stitching me up and using flour to paste it together. That's how we dealt with things back then.
And the notes continue.
Yeah.
Chapter 2. Chapter 2.
I remember the first time I went to the hospital, I was done because that didn't hurt at all. So imagine with Eli, I mean, and that's what's quite sad, because the story that we get with Eli is that basically what it's done in a whole kind of folklore, what's the word I'm looking for? Ceremony. When it's all done, when he becomes a vampire, it's not that he gets bit. It's this whole ceremony that happens. It's like a rite of passage.
Right. Passage.
Exactly, yeah. He was chosen as the special one to go forth, and of course the body mutilation and so on and so forth that's happened during this ceremony, which I think it would have been quite interesting to actually have that. I mean, I would understand that if there was a budgetary reason, but they did film it, but they decided to cut it from the end. Yeah. But then we are dealing with a director who didn't really felt uncomfortable about the vampirism and the horror aspects of the story. So that's the reason why we get this, which in a way, the film does work better because of that. Because I'm sure that if we had Dario Argento doing it, we had a totally different thing altogether.
Yeah.
Eli went in.
The budget sort of like for a rock and a Coke bottle. Great. I think we can up the budget a bit,
Yeah, can you imagine if that option was offered to the Twilight people, though? They're like, what vampire, what genital mutilation, vampire, what? Let's see what's going on in the werewolf line. Let's see what's going on over there.
Yeah. Another thing I didn't understand with the genital mutilation and vampirism, which is probably something we could discuss in the book or we can discuss here, is why would they need to make them sexless?
I don't know, man.
Going back to what Matthew said,
that means that they could they populate? Could they make someone pregnant or carry a baby if they didn't?
I never thought of that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because there's got to be a reason. I mean, okay, she was young. I mean, she was just on the cusp of puberty, so they don't really go into how. Because they never really talk about how old she was when this happened. But obviously, it's something that does happen because it's part of the ceremony that else. So other vampires, is it because they're afraid they're going to reproduce?
Well, I know they say, I'm 12, but I've been 12 for a long time.
Yes.
So I don't know. That's a good
literary thing. It's supposed to be a poetic statement about, you know, like I think he's working on some really, really deep levels. And I've racked my brain thinking about that. Think why? What? And they don't go into it at all. You know what I mean? And I think he's exploring just sexuality and gender roles. I think it's just purely literary. That's me. I don't know.
That's possible. I mean, another thing, I guess if you're a boy and you're sexless and you can pose as a female, that it's probably easier to find your food, because more people are probably more willing to help a poor little girl than they would maybe a poor little boy. Maybe
he says that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah.
I mean, there's so many weird vampire.
Whenever children go missing, I mean, there tends to be big headlines for the blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl than there is for. I mean, when a boy goes missing, you don't really hear about it. Or a young boy. You might get a movie of the week later on about the case, but you never really get like the huge headlines.
Right? Like John Wayne Gacy
Adam's gone missing. Forever. Little Heather's gone missing. It's all over.
I mean, do vampires have sexual pleasure? It depends on your mythos. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Some mythoses they're fucking horny as hell, and others, like, I always wondered that you're dead.
Rice ones are that way. Bram Stoker's the wives. The
wives. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the wives are like that.
Maybe it's all mental. It's not like a. It's saying like it was Papa Smurf invented that. Yeah, because they all
Donnie Darko thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you remember that one? Yeah,
asexual creatures.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's right. That's the reference.
I mean, there's some people who aren't meant to understand it. I mean, I am a white, heterosexual, middle-aged American male. I mean, basically, if my sexuality was a food group, I would be lettuce. All right, there's nothing exotic about that at all. But I'm like Matthew. I've been sitting here just racking my brain forever trying to figure it out.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Tapas, I think. No, mezzanine. Yeah, that's a Gemini for you.
When I'm reading the book, I didn't really think about it, but when I watched the movie, I actually thought about it. It's like reading the book. It's like I would actually think like, "What are they? Why are they doing that?" But because it's missing in the movie, and I started thinking about it. And because you see that, it's like, "Oh, okay." I mean, I don't know. This came to me. Why I'm not quite sure. One of the things I found interesting is that Lena Lenderson's voice is dubbed here because her voice was too high pitched, made more of a sex voice for Eli.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
So they dubbed her voice because her voice is a bit too high pitched.
Because she was still like a young girl, prepubescent or whatever, but. Oh no, it's a guy when the voice drops. I don't think my voice dropped, actually. No, really. Did it? I'm not quite sure.
What about after you got kicked? Didn't it go higher?
Like I just sucked some helium.
Interesting enough, the song Coover I Min Bill was written and performed by Per Gessle, which you'll probably know him from the guy from Roxette.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Swedish, the group. That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Should have had an ABBA song in there, man.
They did actually have Agnetha Folkskog's song Fasenad, which was a huge hit for her in 1968 before she became part of ABBA. She was a huge independent artist before ABBA.
No, but Roxette was so underrated in the States, though. I mean, I've gone back and listened to a lot of their work because I know I guess the lady, the other half of the band. I can't remember her name. She recently passed away in the last year or so.
Yeah,
and I've gone back and listened to their catalog, and man, such a great band.
Listen to your heart. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think what happened to them is that when they first came out, they had more edgier stuff like The Look and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then they got the number one song in Pretty Woman, which was a huge ballad. And then it became like, then it's almost like everyone expected everything to come out with to be a ballad, but their stuff was a lot more different, diverse than that.
Yeah, they got swallowed up by MTV. The same thing happened to B-52s.
Oh, what a brilliant!
After Love Shack.
Brilliant. I mean, B-52 is this genius, man, absolute genius.
So what do you think of so with the Haken storyline taken out of here, and then they did you think the justification about now turning it into like Eli now is the person attacking the townspeople? What do you think of that? Because that's kind of an addition, because of course that doesn't happen in the book. It's Haken that's the one that turns Virginia into the vampire.
No. It's not Haken who turns Virginia into the vampire. It's her. She's hanging up in a tree, and Virginia comes walking down. She drops out of the tree.
Sorry.
Onto her back.
I thought it was Haken at first. I'm Haken's thinking.
How would he even do it? He's human.
No, when Haken becomes a vampire, doesn't he? Because he doesn't buy in the book.
You mean in the book he eventually becomes a vampire? Yeah, but he's not a vampire at that point when Virginia. He's in the hospital still at that point.
Sorry, have you done the ratings or not yet?
But I love all that storyline with him, and it's so perverse. It really takes the pedophilia out of the film. I mean, it would have been a very dark film if they had him sitting on the park bench as a drunk before he meets her, just grabbing boys and molesting them and ending up in prison. And he was drinking half-made wine out of a garbage bag. And then when that library scene, I mean, fuck, dude. If Showtime puts that in there, it's good. That's intense, man.
Yeah, I will pay for Showtime if this is authentic.
Yeah, I hope they do it, dude. It's gonna be wild, dude. It's probably gonna cause a stir.
It's gonna be 10 episodes.
It's transgressive as hell.
Mm-hmm. And it's gonna be 10 episodes, so I imagine they're gonna pretty much divulge into everything.
It's a story about pedophilia. It's a huge theme and a huge issue within that was completely taken out of the movie.
Now, another thing I found quite interesting about this as well is that Eli, which we'll be covering next month. We're doing Interview with the Vampire next month, but we do get the adult person stuck in a child's body.
Yeah, that's right.
Kind of an odd thing when you think about it.
She says she's not an adult, though. She says my brain is still a 12-year-old brain. I still think like a 12-year-old.
Yeah, but at the same time, she does seem that there seems to be a more of a maturity than a 12-year-old.
You have to gain wisdom, right? You have to, even if you have like a 12-year-old immature mind, seeing all that there's wisdom and maturity, I guess.
Yeah, there's wisdom and time.
Yeah.
Can I ask you something? Have you done the rating of the movie?
Not yet, no.
No, not yet.
Okay, because I have to go. So for the movie, my rating is 5 out of 5.
Woo. Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
well, see you in the next one.
Leandro, take it easy.
You too.
Later. Bye.
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 Yeah, so I think when they do the mini series, I said before it's going to be out in 2022, so it's going to be out this year. I know, but then another thing is like, are they going to set it in Sweden or are they going to set it in America?
I hope they set it in Sweden.
Yeah.
I want it exactly like the book, but that's just me.
Yeah. Well, I think if they set it in Sweden, I think that you can probably get a lot more away with things if you set it in a foreign country than you can in your own backyard. Because if you set things in your own backyard, sometimes you have to worry about what people are going to say because it's in their backyard. But if you do it foreign, I'll watch this. This is fantastic, but it's over there, and so it doesn't affect me. But this is fascinating.
Right. Then you have a lot of Americans that feel alienated when they have to watch something that didn't happen in their own country.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where, Let Me In does suffer a little bit, is because it does lack the quietness of the Swedish film. And it also has even the color palette and everything like that, because the color palette that we have in this film here is that it keeps everything very cold and stoic, and there's
it's Los Alamos, Los Alamos, New Mexico. Which, if you've never been to Los Alamos, New Mexico, you think that it doesn't get all snowy and cold there. Yeah, it does in the wintertime. It's horrible, but
so
I mean, even
so many beautiful
Valley
nature shots in that film, in the Swedish film. It was like the land was become a character. It reminded me of Kubrick's The Shining a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Or even The Thing, Carpenter's The Thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And even Insomnia as well.
Yes.
I never did see that one.
You never seen Insomnia? You should give Insomnia a call. Robin Williams is best. He's a psychotic murdering person. So.
That's right. Yeah. I have to see that.
It's really good. He's a great director as well. It's the same guy who did Inception.
Oh, right.
Christopher Nolan.
Batman and stuff. What the hell's that guy's name? Yeah.
Christopher Nolan, is that his name?
Yep. That's it.
Just Nolan, yeah.
I like the same guy who made this Swedish film made The Snowman. Did you see that one?
No, I didn't.
Tons of snow too, just like this. It's very white, cold.
Wow.
Yeah, Joan. I think that Joan Nesbo did that. What did the book?
Yeah.
There is an opera they're making of Let the Right One In as well, so that'd be quite interesting.
Oh, bloody hell!
There's a what?
An opera.
Of course there is.
I like there is 50 versions of snow. Or something like that.
I have to say though, it could work because I did see the staging of. I didn't see the show itself, Let the Right One In, but I remember I've seen the program when it was here. And I know people that went to see it, and they said it was fantastic because it basically it was a box sort of thing, and basically around the box was just the trees and stuff like this, and they just had like this 3D snow going down the whole time, and everything.
Oh, it sounds like IKEA, you know.
But they said that the script was fantastic.
We'll wake up
covered in polystyrene, and manuals to sort of put together a sort of chest of drawers. No.
But what I was saying about the opera, I saw the opera of The Haunting because Lawrence Hyman came to do that, and he goes, "Oh, do you want to see this?" And I went with him. Lawrence Hyman's Shirley Jackson's son, because we interviewed him and kind of got on a little bit of rapport there. When he came to England to look at the opening of The Haunting at the ENO, and I was like, okay. I thought it was brilliant. It wasn't what you would expect. It wasn't like, the music was very
haunting.
It's like Philip Glass writes an opera. Yeah. It's all kind of like all that kind of stuff going on. So who knows? That's what I'm saying. It's like sometimes I like, American Psycho the musical. I mean, when you see that, it worked.
Okay.
It sounds like it'd be really horrible, but I mean, you can watch scenes of it on there, and I tell you what, the musical was a lot bloodier than it was the film. A lot bloodier. Nice. I mean, basically the head. I mean, when he goes down there and he puts the axe goes through the guy's head on stage.
Oh,
and it's like and then the screens will just all be blood everywhere around, all around the audience, stuff like this, and it's just you had this liquid just start seeping out into the audience.
Sounds like a Gwar show. That's great,
right? Yeah, I've seen Shakespeare plays like that. I saw a version of Julius Caesar.
So weird, but sometimes they work, and you're like, it didn't work, but it does. So maybe it'll work. So
I heard Evil Dead's great too.
I've seen Evil Dead.
That'd be good.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
I saw Evil Dead here, and what's great is that you want the first 5 rows, because when you get the first 5 rows, they give you an Evil Dead mat, and you have to put it around like this, around here, and put it over your clothes, because you just walk out there, and by the end, you're just splattered.
Covered in. Oh, classic.
Body parts being
like the Rocky Horror Show. Yeah,
it's great. You walk out there and you take your picture, and you're all like covered in Evil Dead blood. You're like, hey,
great. I remember we got totally soaked at the Rocky Horror Show in Hackney Empire, and because when you had to put up the umbrella. Yeah, when it was great.
Well, when I went and saw Carrie the musical. Here at the Dunmar, the thing is that when the bucket of blood falls on her, and it basically just covers her, and basically just hits. If you're in the front row of the audience, it just hit you a little bit. But then what happens is that when she's like this, all the seats and everything just move back. You're in the audience, you're like being thrown back like this, and then all the people are being thrown all over the place. All these actors are being flown around you, and she's like, sort of thing. So they can make it work, and the music was fantastic. It was, it worked. I have to sit there and say that Carrie the Musical is like one of my all-time favorite musicals now because of seeing that. So
nice.
But then I've seen stuff that's like, what in the hell have they done? So it'll be interesting to see what they would do with this. So I might go, I'll give it a shot, see, But I said before that, the stage show of Let the Right One In, from what I heard, was brilliant. It was one, some people.
I'd go. I doubt they'll come here.
They ever saw. So, the sets look good. I've seen the pictures and I've seen bits and pieces of it, but I didn't see it myself. But from the people I heard who hate horror, I mean, these people who hate horror, they're really into serious theater, and they were like, they became fans of the. And I think I read the book afterwards and saw the movie afterwards, all from seeing the stage show. So that's something.
Nice.
So, who knows?
Who are these people who hate horror? Do you have their addresses available?
Get them.
Yeah. we all love to be scared to death.
Hate horror. I think that but I don't think that they hate horror. I think they hate jump scare horror. They don't like the
gratuitous blood flying.
Yeah. We'll give them that much.
It's like when you meet somebody who says they hate the Beatles and all they've ever heard is "I Want to Hold Your Hand." They've never listened to the White Album. They've never listened to "Let It Be," but they're like, "Oh, I don't like that." You never listen to it.
Well, that's why it was red and blue. Yeah.
Yeah. Your basis of comparison is The Conjuring. Yeah, we don't care for the Warrens either. We get it, but
right.
Oh, hey, talking about The Conjuring, Keith, this apparently, I was going to say, it's up in Enfield. Apparently,
Enfield.
Yeah. I know it's not. I know it was in Massachusetts.
I think when we get to The Conjuring and Ed and Lorraine Warren, I think you have to say loosely based.
Loosely based. Okay, got it.
But if you have Sky, they did a mini series based on that case with Nick Frost in it from Shaun of the Dead.
Oh, okay.
Eileen Atkinson, and some really good actors and people like this. And watch that. That'll give you more of a realistic view. And that was actually done with the family that was involved in.
Okay.
And it's horrible stuff happens, but it's quite low key as well. And it does do it with they film it and they tell the story with a skepticism going over at the same time, but reality at the same time. So you're kind of left not knowing yes or no, but they do a really good job at it. They kind of keep
that sounds like the typical British way to do things. Like
he won the Oscar. He did all the Mike Leigh films as well. Biggest guy. He was in Life is Sweet and Timothy Spratt, something like that. He's in it as well. I think he won a BAFTA for it. But get that if you want to know about the Enfield case, watch that. That's better than it's like watching the Amityville Horror movie and trying to get whatever you feel about that. But the book is so much different from the movie. I mean,
did you see the preview for the new movie? It's in space. Amityville in space. No joke.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like Chris Paul.
In space, no one can hear you scream. That's because there's no atmosphere.
When the Amityville Horror came out, I was really into the Amityville Horror, because I was in school, and I remember going and getting going to the microfiche and getting all the Round Defoe murder stuff and all, pulling everything up. And, I did a poster of in art class, I did the house, and I did in detail, the model and everything else. I was still at my family's house and stuff. I was so into it. And then, I saw the movie. And I was like, okay, I was really disappointed. I was really upset by that. And I really wanted to believe. And then John G. Jones realizes that the Amityville, the horror, starts chasing the Lutzes across the country. It's like, oh. and then you got other stories about, but now, the Lutzes, they sold off the Lutzes furniture, and that's haunted now. And it's kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah, the one I've got the box set. I got the box set last year, and the only one I've watched on it is Amityville 1992, about a possessed clock that takes over the house. But I need to get through all of it. I'm like,
it's great.
I need to give these a go.
Was it a digital trouble when Patty Duke Austin?
I remember the second one was kind of good, wasn't it?
The Possession.
The second one dealt more with the murders, didn't it?
There was more sex in it. There was
He starts having sex with his sister and stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, how would a haunted clock?
The second one did as well because then
I am a haunted clock. I mean, I am a haunted clock, and I'm going to turn the time back so you're late for work.
Those guys are so terrible scammers, though. They should make a movie about just them just being absolute lying pieces of shit. That would be good.
Have you seen the documentary called My Amityville Horror?
Yeah, I was on the podcast where we talked about it. Remember? It was years ago now.
Yeah, but I mean, he's really messed up with me.
Yeah, he's on meth, man.
Yeah. And then he had this brother. His brother did a podcast. I saw that, and he seems to be a bit more with it. He's not really. I kind of wonder what happened to Missy, though. I still want to know what happened to Missy, the daughter,
right?
The one with Jody the pig.
Yeah,
but it's quite interesting about George and what he was into, and all those books and stuff that he had, and sort of thing.
If books on black magic make you your house possessed, I'm doomed.
Oh no, now that the Warrens are gone. The Warrens are all gone now, so I don't know who Zach Bagans is going to exploit anymore. That guy. It's kind of I'm kind of glad that the whole televised paranormal scene has come and gone. It's I was knee deep in it for a decade of my life, and I'm just glad it's not really a thing right now. But it's destined to return. It always does, just like bell bottoms. It's going to come back.
Yeah, I saw somebody wearing some the other day. Pretty cool,
I mean, the thing is, when it comes to Ronald DeFeo and his voices or whatever like this, have you ever seen the crime photos of the DeFeos?
Yeah.
No.
And you look, and the thing is, have you seen like the wallpaper and the carpet and the thing is, if you do all the drugs that he was taking, you'd be seeing shit as well.
Hey, Keith,
you remember LSD and heroin at the same time? I'm like, well, I've done a lot of drugs and party with a lot of people. But that's like a mixture you don't often see.
That's a staple diet in Newcastle, but no. But there was a guy called Ouija. He always seemed to appear on the scene and take photographs of like horrific scenes. He almost like he was there before the incident happened. Almost like, really. Ouija. Yeah, Colombo, yeah.
He also was involved with the Highgate Vampire when that was going on in the 70s, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah.
People were being found dead with their being dead inside Highgate Cemetery for a while. Highgate Vampire. And they had to exorcise them. It was like a big thing.
In a magica,
Yeah, so I just have to remember, like, looking, like, because I always had this vision of what inside the house looked like, and then when I saw the murder scenes and look at the wallpaper and everything, I was like, shit, if you're on all those drugs and all that wallpaper is going to be moving for you. Because I mean, I used to do acid and just watch marble tables moving. So it's like,
yeah. 70s Italian restaurant look.
Yeah. Also, no, some 70s wallpaper. My mum had this amazing stuff. I mean, it was like trippy anyway. It was just like big orange circles with black dots in it. Really weird, man. Come in from a night out on the beer or playing a gig or something and be like looking at this wallpaper, and even the dog was barking at it. Get that bloody
wallpaper! Thank God we're back to modern colors now. Now that you can do acid and try to sit at home without freaking out too much.
Yeah, right. Totally.
You can walk through the wall.
Yeah, warp through the walls. Yeah.
I just remember doing acid and listening to Kate Bush's Hounds of Love album came out.
Oh my gosh.
And so I just remember, like, I was living in this 1920s hotel in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Just finished school and a bunch of us did it. I just remember sitting there in the lobby looking listening to Hounds of Love, where she's like waking the witch and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Marble table, I was like, Full ladies are like, are you okay?
Yeah. Oh, jeez. She was doing a conjuring on that. Katie. I wish I'd have saw Kate live. Yeah, it would have been cool. Did anybody see Kate Bush live?
I didn't see her live. I was going to go see her live this time around, but I had.
I remember sort of had about. I was about 10 shillings short of the ticket back in the 70s. I was just going to bus down to London and just try and go and see her at the Hammersmith, but I didn't have the nerve at the time. So I wish I'd have gone now. She could have got in.
Well, then she did that one. Then she did her second concert, didn't she? About 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I was gonna go see that, but a friend of mine went to see it and said she was brilliant. But
mind, there's some great tribute acts of people. And that, you know, there's a girl who's on. I think she's on Instagram. She does a Kate Bush tribute, and she's really, really cool. You know, she's really good. I want to see a Bjork tribute. That'd be cool. You know, remember Bjork, guys?
I dealt with
Stalker.
I dealt with some of her art not too long ago. I picked up an entire truckload of some of her artwork in Seattle and shuttled it all the way back to Dallas.
Woo!
Wow. Did you ever do a deep dive on her Stalker?
No. I had like a crush on her though.
Yeah.
Dude, her Stalker story is fucking. He videotaped the whole thing. You can go watch it like for hours and hours of this guy. It is scary, dude.
He's totally
York had a
terrifying, huh?
York, right?
Yeah, dude. He sent her this fucking bomb that was gonna blow up and send acid into her face, and then he shot himself. But he had like shaved off his head, shaved off all his eyebrows. He was naked. This big naked guy. Bald, no eyebrows, paints his whole body red, and is like talking and filming it all. He made a diary of it.
Wow! Hey, somebody should do a documentary.
Luckily, they smelled his body rotting. Went in there, found the videotapes, and were like, "Holy shit! A bomb is going to Bjork," and were able to intercept it before she got it. It probably would have been her secretary, but whoever opened that up was going to get acid in their fucking face.
Oh my god, man!
I was watching this documentary about Agnes Folkskrog from ABBA, the blonde one.
Yeah.
And she had a stalker, and he was like writing her letters, and she called the police on him and all this other stuff. And then he showed up at a party, and then she didn't know it was her stalker, but she started dating him, and then she ended up moving him into her house. And then she found out and then the police had to go up to her and go, "This is the guy who's been stalking you." She had no idea who the person was because she had got these letters and these death threats, and he was like, and then when they kicked him out, that basically he kept coming back and coming back and coming back, and she had so she became a recluse, and she had to move, and that's why she disappeared from the eye.
Wow.
And then something happened, and he died either in some kind of weird accident, car accident or something like that, and then that's when she resurfaced again. But
wow,
mad, she didn't know, all she got was letters. She didn't know what he looked like.
The call is coming from inside the house.
Oh jeez, man! What's wrong with human beings? Bloody hell! No one know the aliens wouldn't come and say hello.
Oh yeah.
Have you been to that planet Earth?
This happening in beehives.
No, you don't. No, no, you don't.
It's like that. It's like that scene in National Lampoon's Vacation where the aliens come by. They're just like, "Well, roll them up."
Yeah, roll them up. Let's go.
Well, I know.
There will come. There's some nice people on the planet. You know, there will come someday. You know.
I have a friend who's a Madonna stalker, and there's like 5 or 6 of them. This is about 15 years ago. And I remember they're going, "Oh, Madonna's in town. She's staying at this hotel." And they go, "Do you want to stand outside with us?" And I said, "What the hell? I got nothing else to do. Let's see what this is all about." So we do, and it's out there for about half an hour. She gets out of the car. She goes in. We go back to his house with these other stalker people. And it's kind of weird because they're going, "Did you see that look she gave? That look was for me. Oh, did you see that look?" You know, and they were like talking like this. And then there was an interview. This is back when Frozen came out, you know, in that song Frozen sort of thing. And then the video comes on, they're watching this interview, and she's going, "Oh, that word that she says, that's for me." And this is the way they're talking. They're dead serious.
Wow. Okay.
And then it's like, and then the Frozen video comes on, and then, you know, there's that part where she bows down and the CGI birds come out from her, you know, whatever. Oh my gosh, she's fantastic. How did she do that? Oh, I can't believe she was able to do that. It's like, I said to her, "This is fucking CGI, folks." I mean, it's not her. And they got really angry. They asked me to leave and everything.
That's when you crawl out the bathroom window.
He became a vegetarian. So I used to invite him over and give him mince and tell him that it was corn, and he was to eat it. And I'm just like, which I guess part of my bulliness coming back out again.
Yeah.
But with stalkers, you kind of like, you kind of look at them, and I've never. I mean, there's a lot of people I'm enthralled with as far as their talent is concerned, but I wouldn't. I'm never enthralled enough to actually stalk them or come to the point where I'm like screaming over anyone. And I find that really bizarre.
It is bizarre. I mean, it's almost like, oh God, that's terrible. I mean, wow, you must have something going on in your life, surely. You are the hero of your own life. So you make it the best you can. But to stalk someone, that's man. I'm a Gemini, so I stalk myself.
I love and stuff like this, but I would never. I never go that far to be fanatical about anything.
Yeah. Well, I want to say, don't meet your heroes because you will be disappointed.
I seem to remember like certain. I seem to remember certain drunken like conference calls with certain literary agents where they would be like, "So, who wants Keith Richards' agent's phone number?" Yeah. I'm not going to call any names though.
Yeah.
I always got phone numbers.
I think I still have Johnny Depp's agent's phone number somewhere. I'm going to have to look for it.
Where do you think some of our interviews come from? From that list?
A number of somebody. Oh boy. Yeah. Gosh,
I remember someone at work said they were in love with Brad Pitt. So I go, here's Brad Pitt's agent's phone number.
Yeah.
And I can't tell these stories back home because nobody believes me.
Don't tell anybody where you got it from. Just do it. Give them a call.
Yeah.
On that note. So let's score Let the Right One In on a scale of 5, and started with you, Craig. How many stars do you give this?
It's definitely 5 stars because I watched it and I just said that was so good what I just watched, so that's why I'm going to give it 5 because it was brilliant cinematography and serenity and really, really nice film.
Yeah.
And what about yourself, David? How many do you?
Yeah, another 5 also. And it's funny, it's just captivating, and it's, as the guys were saying, like it's a different slant and an old idea, but and plus, it's just a beautiful part of the world, and maybe not so much in the movie, but it is a beautiful place to go and visit in Scandinavia. But I definitely a big punch, teeth grinding 5.
And what about yourself, Chad? How many stars do you give this?
This is definitely a 5. This is it's a beautiful film. Beautiful film. From the actors to the characters to the setting. Just, man, swallow your pride. Screw the American version. Read the subtitles and watch this version of the film.
Yeah, the IKEA version is the best.
Come for the vampirism, stay for the meatballs.
What about yourself, Matthew? How many stars do you give this?
Yeah, I hate these star system, but I give it 5, I guess. I felt like the same way with American Psycho, that they took all the transgressive stuff out. I mean, it could have been so much darker if they had gotten into what's his name, Harkham. Yeah, Harkham. I mean, they just really left him out. Like, he barely even spoke. There was a part where she's yelling at him, and he's just sitting there, and she's like, "Don't you have anything to say?" And all he can say is, "Forgive me." I think it's like his.
Oh.
And like there was when he was sitting in the Chinese restaurant, and they come over to drink with him. In the book, he bought him a whiskey and was cool, but in the movie, he just gets up and walks away.
Yeah.
So, but I still give it 5 stars. It's great. It's a fabulous film.
The big 5.
I think it's a good companion piece. The book, I think the book, of course, is better, but I also think that I said before, I think they marry well together. I think they complement each other very well. And, and I said before, I mean, it's a 2-hour film, and it doesn't feel like a 2-hour film at all.
Mm-mm.
I mean, it's beautifully filmed, it's beautifully done, and I mean, and it's still considered, from the 2000s to today, it's still on people's top 10 lists. So it says a lot there. Well, this brings us to the end of the Literary License Podcast. Next week, we'll be doing our remake. We'll be doing The Shining from 1980, which is directed by Stanley Kubrick, and the 1993 miniseries, which was due to the unhappiness of Stephen King, decided to write his own adaptation, which will be the miniseries starring Steven Weber and Rebecca De Mornay in his version of The Shining. And of course, our back to the 80s, we'll be doing the 80s, the 1980s. Sorry, the 2-for-1, the 80s. Horror will be covering the German film Necromantic about having sex with corpses, and Basket Case about what would happen if you sit there and remove your conjoined twin and put them in a basket and went through life. And of course, we'll be covering our Dark Shadows. And next month, Book the Screen, Kings of Horror episode will be Interview with a Vampire with Anne Rice, and of course, the film starring Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. So it's good night for myself. Good night, Craig.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, David.
Good night.
And Matthew, do you want to let anyone know where they can find you, or anything that they want to buy or anything?
Yeah, I got a book about growing weed called Kind of Penthy, horror book. You can find it anywhere you get books. If it's not at your bookstore, just ask them to order it. But it's on Amazon. And I got 2 collections of short stories out. Under Rotting Sky, won some awards. Been a lot of people like that. And I'm around. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. Just take a look out. Matthew Brockmeyer. And thanks so much for having me, Keith.
Oh, and what about you, Chad? Before we say goodbye to you, anything that you would like to share?
I say grab a copy of my splatterpunk western, Starving Zoe. It's kind of a strange take inspired by the narration of J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye when mixed with those other 2 genres. You can find me at cderekmiller.com and everywhere on social media at Howl Growl Snarl.
And of course, if you're looking for more information, you'll find that in the show notes. And of course, if you sign up for the newsletter, they are in our newsletter on a monthly basis as well. So it's good night for myself, and we'll see you next week for remake with The Shining from 1980 by Stanley Kubrick and the 1993 miniseries The Shining of the Sea. Good night, y'all.
Good night.
Driving through the city as I look